quick.
I ain't got nowhere to be today.
I gotta
till
go to
2
work
o'clock,
after
so
lunch. so.
Good today. No doctor's appointments today.
Yeah, you took off at noon last time, didn't you?
Yeah, because my wife had a 1 o'clock doctor's appointment.
Someone said, this one says if you wait.
Assume everything's
last
okay.
minute, It only takes a minute.
Yeah, that was just her pain management appointment. That's a monthly occurrence.
Would you get a steak?
With a slice of tomato.
I saw that.
How are y'all doing this morning? Good, all right. Okay, great. All right, perfect. Bathroom while I'm thinking.
Or you're not using the update?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've got.
Just, yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. All right, so this is percentages, this is school. Is that the same school? No, I adjusted it.
That was,
I reordered them to be in order, and then I also, we added, was there some income utilization, and I changed, some of those changed. You want this?
Got rain tomorrow.
Yeah.
For the golf tournament. Until Dawn gets back. It's long to be here, he's just running a little behind.
Feel underdressed at the budget workshop. Coats and ties.
Is that air not working, or is that one?
What's that?
We're just letting the breeze in, or?
Yeah.
That's all right, our air at work is out too, upstairs.
Oh, really? It is a little musky in here.
All right, I think we're 9 o'clock. You ready? Yep. Wait on Larry. Whenever you're ready. I'm ready when you are. I'll wait on you though. All right. I'll call to order the Blythwood Town Council Budget Work Session Number 2 here at the Manor. Today is Tuesday, May 4th. The time is now 9 a.m. Gentlemen, before you, I apologize. Councilman Sloan Griffin did text me. He's on the way. Apologies extended, but we're going to start without him. We will ask Ms. Sarah Lynn to call the roll, please.
Present.
present.
Here. Quorum is established. And Ms. Yarborough, was the notification and posting of today's meeting agenda completed in accordance with state law? Thank you. Gentlemen, the agenda is before you.
Make a motion, we approve as
Second.
presented.
It's been probably motion and seconded to approve the agenda as written. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The agenda is approved. All right, let's join Councilman Brock. Do you mind? Pledge of allegiance and,
Not at all, sir.
all right, thank you.
United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Father, we come before you this day to tackle additional work for the town. We ask that you bless this body, bless this town, this county, this state, and this nation as we continue to go through tumultuous times during COVID. We ask that you bless our first responders, our doctors, our nurses that are on the front lines continuing to fight this fight. Bless our military, domestic, and abroad as they continue to fight for freedom. We ask that you watch over us, guide us. Thank you for the rain that you gave us yesterday and the rain that we may receive through the rest of the week. We ask that you guide us and direct us. In your holy name, we pray. Amen.
Okay, and before we move to open citizen comments, I'll welcome some guests. I see Ms. Hunter from MPA Strategies here. Welcome to you, ma'am. Thank you for being here. We're excited to have you on board. Former Mayor Ross is here. Good to see you, sir. The Chairman of our Planning Commission, Mr. McHenry. Other distinguished guests, former Councilmember Malcolm Gorge. Mr. Hanna, good to see you too. And thank you all for being here. So with that, we'll move to open citizen comments and any council member comments. Anybody have any comments before we start today? Go ahead, please.
I got one I just want to introduce. I want to introduce myself really quick, and then I'll try to take about just 3 or 4 minutes. My name is Brantley Hanna. I've been a long citizen here at Blythwood since 1981, all through the school system, with the United States Navy, who we just prayed for our first responders, who I did a service with and were retired from the fire department. A couple small businesses we've had success with throughout the years, and we've always done that with me and my family through, with 4 daughters and a wife still, the same wife after 25 years. That's always a good thing. But we've always done that through living through our means. We just talked through the prayer about COVID. I appreciate us saying the prayer and not shying away from that in this time we're in. But COVID, I think, has attacked people in a lot of different ways. Obviously, we know physically, but also in their pocketbooks. And I think a lot of people weren't ready for the emergency. And so what I want to introduce today, I go to church at Village Church. I appreciate y'all having us, allow us to have the event out here a couple weeks ago. But I always teach Financial Peace University through them. It's a 9-week program through Dave Ramsey. Absolutely has changed our life about 25 years ago, and usually changes some people's lives if I ever got the opportunity to teach. About 2 years ago, I became one of his master coaches, and with the idea of maybe doing another business, and I just shied away from that. So we do it through a ministry through our church. I do lead the programs, and when I mean coach, I don't allow people to go through any excuses. I give it to them hard. I give it to them honest. I give it to them loving. I also give it to them straight. And I feel like our community needs that. When I do a class the 2 or 3 times a year at Village, usually have about 9 to 20 people in it, anywhere in that range, and I think it changes some people's lives. We talk about budgeting, which is what y'all are doing. We're talking about having a plan. We're talking about getting out of debt. And we're, from the first time our kids go to college, they're shoved credit cards, and that's something we teach against. We teach about having a plan and buying things in cash. We talk about having a 6-month plan and saving for college when they're early instead of scrambling when our kids are 16 and 17. We talk about retiring early and not retiring on the government, not relying on the government, which about 87% of the people do. As a general statistic, just before we go any farther, about 80% of the people are living check to check. That means 80% in your church, in our school system, in Blythwood, in our community, in our county, and probably 80% in this room, because it's a statistic that covers everybody. And so when we're talking about COVID being so tough, we were not prepared for an emergency. The emergency being your air conditioner, your transmission, COVID, when you're getting knocked out of work for a couple months. So I really believe in this program. It's a great program. Why I'm here, I think when I get 20 people going up to Village Church, and it's a nervous time for people that because they put their information out there a little bit. When we do that, my idea is to have a class here that the town supports. So we would need the building, we would need a budget for snacks, and then depending on how we did it, the town would either buy the program, which costs $2,500, or normally, the individual buys the program. If the town bought the program at $2,500, they get unlimited access on the program for a whole year, and we'd be teaching it twice here. 19 people need to be in the class, because we will still charge them $129. Brantley didn't get any money. I'm not looking to make any money. I really am empowered by getting people to the right level. So if 19 people still pay $129, it's paid for. If we just get that many families, and we can at least do it 2 or 3 other times. That's one issue. The other issue here is it is a biblically based program. We talk about, in the book of Proverbs, all these different books of the Bible that talks about money, and it's a biblically based program. So if the town wants to support that, it is biblically based. We need a little bit of the budget. For some snacks, we provide that. We need to be able to use that screen to teach it. It's 9 weeks. I do it from usually 6:30 in the afternoon to 8:30 in the evening on a specific day every week. Then the place has to be secured, so either I'm being utilized with a key, or somebody else has to be up here. There's some negatives. There's some positives. What it's going to do for our community is, I think, make Blythwood look great instead of us just doing some fun events, which we always do if it's the rodeo or 4th of July or whatever. Now we're teaching our people, and I think it can save some lives. Last one to fall on, we're at a 50% rate with our marriages, and that's where I kind of started struggling with the fire department years ago, because I love these guys that I work with, and I get all in their business. That's the other thing. We're kind of getting in people's business, and most people, including the town, ain't going to want to get in people's business when we do this class. And I think that's exactly what we need to do. We need to mentor young people. We need to talk about their families. We need to mentor them with the Word of Christ, and we need to talk about their money if they're willing to allow that. 50% of marriages, or 52% right now, marriages are failing. It's the number one cause of divorce in America is money problems, budgeting problems, them not communicating, them cheating with money, and then causing some other issues. So I think it'd be a great opportunity. If it can happen, that's great. If it's not, I'm going to keep going in churches and doing it. But I just wanted to offer that up and request this building for the use of it through the town. Y'all got any questions for me?
Questions, council members?
Mr. Brantley, what was your last name?
My last name is Hannah.
Hanna?
Correct, yes, sir.
Thank you.
I appreciate y'all letting me speak.
Yes, sir. I think it's a laudable goal, and thank you for what you're doing for our community. All right, any other open citizen comments? Mr. Gorge, please. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right, that's okay.
Mr. Ross.
I remember those days when you'd panic, you didn't have the list in front of you, and all of a sudden it's still sitting back there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm here, I think I'm gonna be brief because I have a 10:15 tea time, and you know that's where that is in my heart. But I am here on a concern for the budget, and my biggest concern is when I got it and I looked over page 13 in the budget, and that is the table for illustrative purposes only, TBD upon request, submittal, and review by council. But there are some proposed numbers here for funding with hospitality tax and then and even a tax. And I was lucky enough to get printed out one of your worksheets here of Mayor Franklin, when I was mayor and you were a councilman, how you started. It looks like you've added a couple of columns to there. One that I want you to really think about a lot because it affected the request from the organizations that have brought the best and the largest number of people here are being penalized because they're making money doing it. And I don't know, in 8 years, I don't know anywhere I ever found in any statute, in anything, that said one of the criteria or one of the things you'd be worried about would be how much the organization made from putting on the event. And in your scoring for net income, and to take the Rib Fest, for example, it got a 0. But certainly in all the other categories, it's very strong. It might be one of the strongest in the number of people it brings in one day here to Blythwood. I tell you, I'm taken back by that one, but also the tournament of bands for Blythwood High School. I tell you, I think if they find out that you have gone to zero, and again, it's got to be only because of their income they make off of it. I mean, that's a lot of people with a lot of kids in Blythwood. They don't play baseball, they don't do this, but they're in the band. And in their defense, in all the time I was there, it was almost a no-brainer because they brought about 22, 23 different bands from all over the state in here all day long, one day. And those people got to go somewhere. They got to buy gas to get back out of here. They got to eat. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I'm asking y'all as a council, and I'm just going to say it outright, to get off the kick about what an organization makes. I mean, it's almost like you're against capitalism, or you're against somebody being profitable. There was a lot of dadgum hard work for the Rib Fest. All of you, and we wanted you there, was up there. If you had a cold beer, it was great. If you got some ribs, it was great. But folks, there were people parking cars. There were people getting sponsorships. There were people going up to Ridgeway to get the people on the Pig on the Ridge to join it. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that the chamber did. There's a lot of stuff the Blythwood High School band does to put on that. So I am pleading with you to please reevaluate the Franklin ratio or the Franklin or the council, the way you look at it. And I challenge you to not consider what a organization makes in the end. I don't even know why that would be a concern. And Mr. Brock, I'm not going to pick on you, but I have watched you ask some really pointed questions to the Bengals Hutto thing, and it must be your concern. And your question is always, what are you going to do with that money? Well, what does that have to do with you? You gave money that was collected by this town through the businesses for you to again promote an event that would bring people into the town to spend more money. Now, that's pretty simple. What somebody does with the money afterwards, I don't get it. And why you would think they need to put that to next year's, I don't get that, because you're still collecting the money. You've still made money by them coming and us and them putting on the events. And I would only say to end that I think you're on a real slippery slope, because eventually, if you don't fund these events, we're not going to go out there to make $5,000 to bring 4,000 people into the town for one day. For our businesses do good, but it's for the long term. It's to make them fall in love with Blythwood, keep coming back, a place they want to come. And I hear all of you talk about that. So that would be, I just encourage you. I was really disappointed with some of the numbers, and it did seem like the events that made money. The last thing, you have an event on here, gosh, it's got to be a great thing, Range for Hope. I think that's a veterans, disabled veterans tournament, golf tournament. It's going to be at Cobblestone Park. They asked for $10,000. You can only have 30 teams at Cobblestone Park. That's 120 people. If they bring a guest, I mean, they have somebody with them, that's 240 people. The Rib Fest, 4,000. These other events, 2,000. Gosh, the Tournament of Bands, there's no telling. Those stands are full on one side. So, and you awarded them $10,000 and no penalty because you don't know what they're going to make. You gave them all 5 points on the rating because there is nothing to look at for net income. I just think there's some things to look at there, and I just don't know in what direction you're headed or why that's such a big deal. So I appreciate your time. I hope in this budget you'll talk about this some more and maybe look at that, and I would really encourage you to get off the kick of what did the organization make. Thank you. And if you have a question for me, I'd be glad to answer you.
Mr. Mayor, may I respond?
Please, go ahead, Mr. Brock.
Thank you, Mr. Ross, for pointing out what you believe are our shortcomings. I will address these in a couple of points. Number one, in regards to the Parks Hutto Bengals golf tournament, the problem that I have it's not a problem with the event. It's one line that they put in their report, and it says, and I'm going to read this from last month's town council meeting, remainder of funds allow the Bengal team to participate in other tournaments across the state. You sat up there and told us for 10 minutes why we should spend money to bring people into the town. So they're telling me that they're going to use that money to take people out of the town. It's contrary to what you just said. That's
Councilman
the
Brock,
only
you are
problem I have.
you missed the whole point. They've already put on the event and brought the people into
Well,
the town.
then
What
we
does
should
it
use
matter
that- we
what
should-
they do later?
Are you going to let me finish, or are you going to interrupt?
I'm going to point out that you're incorrect.
Well,
You're
we can
you're
have a
not even
difference of
addressing
opinion,
what
sir.
I said.
No, I hear what you said.
One at a
I can
time, gentlemen.
disagree.
Mr. Brock, one at a time, please. Mr. Brock, please continue.
That's my point. If our money is used to generate tourists in the town, then I don't believe that excess funds should be used to take people outside of the town. If we have a difference of opinion, that's okay. We can have a difference of opinion. That's my position. Number two, in regards to where an event, if they make a profit, which apparently some people don't like the idea of hearing that, I have no problem with an event making a profit. However, we do not have an infinite amount of funds that flow into this town. At some point, we would like to have, I assume that this council and the members and the residents of this town would like to have some events that are different from the same events we have every single year. If we don't ever add any new events, it's just wash, rinse, and repeat, wash, rinse, and repeat, which is great for organizations like you because you continue to receive the funds from the town. But anybody else who wants to show up and say, hey, I'd like to have an event, oh, we're sorry, we don't have any money because we continue to pump it into the events that we currently have in the town. We don't have any more space in the inn. So the idea behind it is, and several of us have talked about this, is we will continue to provide seed money until events and individuals are able to operate on their own. Let me ask you a question, and then I will be quiet. If an individual receives government assistance because they're unemployed or whatnot, and then that individual improves their financial status in life to the point where they no longer need government assistance, should the government continue to give them money? Yes or no?
Well, listen.
No. It's a yes or no question.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to respond to the
Please, yes,
councilman
please
other than
respond
just
at
yes
your
or
will.
no.
Yes, sir.
Well, okay, no, because they've gotten on their feet, they're doing great.
You made my point. Thank you, sir.
Well, I'm going to make a point back to you. We're not talking about, the chamber's not somebody or the historical society or whatever the group is that's putting on a function. I don't know how that's that's not apples to apples. A person that's needing assistance, that can't buy food, that doesn't have a job, that doesn't have health care, gosh, yes, they need help. And then they find a job, and maybe they don't need the help. What you were elected for and what I was elected for was to dispense these funds to organizations or groups, whoever, to put on an event to bring people to the town of Blythwood. And a lot of these have done that. And that's the only criteria. I challenge you to find in a statute about H-tax or A-tax where you should be analyzing it because of the profits the event made, or what they did with it afterwards. Talking about the Blythwood bingo thing, it just shows your obsession with what do they do? What did they do with that money? Where did it go? And again, that's not even part of when a proposal comes in, when they come back for the 20% to get, it's a final report. I would think you would tend to start having organizations almost try to lie or to cover up something, not to show they made any money or not to put on the organization as good as they did it. But I'll let that be y'all's decision, and I appreciate the time, and thank you all for listening to me, and I wish you luck. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ross. All right, thank you. Mr. Malcolm Gorge.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and
Good morning.
members of council. I'm going to be brief. I'm here on behalf of Camp Discovery, and I just simply wanted to express our thanks and appreciation for being included in your budget for an annual subscription of $1,500. This means a lot to us. For all non-profits, fundraising is a daily priority. That's what we rely on in order to keep our services going, to pursue our vision and mission that we're here to execute. So today is also a special day. It's Giving Tuesday. Midlands Gives. We'll be showing our appreciation to all those folks that make the effort to contribute to our cause, and this will enable us to continue providing the services to our families and the schools and kids for the next year. Just as a byline, Camp Discovery is beginning to open up its doors again. We'll be running summer camps this year. We're already pretty much fully booked, and we may even have to put on extra weeks to satisfy that demand. We also have some tremendous virtual programs that we're running now, and we're associated with NASA for STEM related programs. So we're going from strength to strength. So I want you to know that all the money and funding and support that you give is very much appreciated and put to very good value that is of benefit to the community. So thank you again.
Thank you, sir. Any comments, council members? Thank you, Mr. Gorge, not only for your service to our planning commission, but continued service and for the community as a whole, and we appreciate it. Mr. Phil Fry, sir.
Yes, name's Phil Fry, 171 Elton Walker Road, and representative of the Chamber of Commerce. And I want to be reiterative, preaching to the choir, if you will, from some of Mr. Ross's comments. And I'm mystified by the point system and really can't understand how Ribfest came in at the 6th lowest score of all of the events listed, and Oktoberfest relatively the same. My message is this. Throughout my business career, and I'm carrying it forward into the position I've been appointed to as director of the chamber, I believe in partnerships. And successes that I did have in business were directly related to having a partnership with my customer, whereas there's mutual benefit for both parties. Sometimes to a fault, I tried to ascertain what my customers' needs were and to be proactive in fulfilling that. Again, successful in doing so. That I carry forward in a business-to-business relationship, governmental, quasi-governmental, whatever you want to say, with the relationship from the chamber to the town. Admittedly, there was a history that was not good. And looking back, in the spreadsheet clearly shows from, I think, 2016 or 17 onward, funds distributed to the town, from the town to the chamber, various things. One of them was $17,000 a few years back, which was equivocable from specific request. Going back a little further in history, the chamber had been involved with the Christmas parade. They did that. They were asked to do the visitor center, which had been another organization. Didn't want any more. Chamber was asked to do so. And quite honestly, and I'm not placing any fault, blame, or anything, chamber lost its way because we got distracted into trying to fulfill a budget, et cetera, et cetera. I was partially involved with, as I moved to a board position up to that point in time, and, did what we could. Proud to say, standing here today, less than 2 years ago, Chamber had a $17,000 deficit in their operating budget. That's not the case today. And some of that is, a significant part of it is due to the support of the town and the events that we created in the last 2 years that have been profitable. I'm mystified by being penalized for that. Our intent is to grow each of these events. We've explored additional events and, to get traction, to get support to do it. It doesn't come from just haphazardly going out and doing something. It is a significant amount of planning to do so and budgeting to make that happen. Case in point, Rib Fest, we went from 2,800 pounds, sold out in 2.5 hours, 6,000 pounds, sold out in 2.5 hours. We're planning 10,000 pounds next year. We spent $11,740 some odd dollars for ribs. About 10,000 pounds of ribs next year, that's $20,000. If I'm going to allocate it 8,000, that makes it a little bit tougher to try to pull off. And we, again, partnership is what it's all about. To my knowledge, and in all the reading of A-Tax, H-Tax, it's all about people on the streets, butts in the seats, heads on the beds. I think we've accomplished that to a certain degree. Are we perfect? No. We have designs to make it even better. I'm going to digress to the point that we had to, by virtue of ordinances, or what was passed here by council, our budgets for 21, 22 for H-Tax, A-Tax had to be in by February 3rd. A lot of things were unknown. Obviously, we feel like there was tremendous amount of momentum generated by this year's Rib Fest. Our board has concluded that both of our events, the Oktoberfest and the Rib Fest coming forward, will not be just a one-day event. We will be going to a Friday evening and Saturday configuration. Although contracts are not signed, we have in place a lineup of entertainment that, expands, brings the following. That does not come without a cost, as I alluded to in the final report from the Rib Fest. Additional costs are going to be needed for trash, dumpsters, parking in particular. We're going to have to look at shuttles. I would like to think that we could stand on the applications as they come up for the council approval as they are, even though we're expanding. If we have to revise, we will. But as far as what the numbers are and what we project the cost to be, but we will stand on what it is because we believe in what we're doing. I want to reiterate again that we as a chamber in a partnership relationship, nearly every single one, most of these events that are listed on here are nonprofits. Every event that we stage, we do offer nonprofits space to promote their wares at no cost. And it is very clear that we have taken part of our proceeds and to give to some of these worthy organizations as well. I think that's part of being a community partner. And there's other things within the agenda on budget line items that I can reiterate over and over again what a partnership really is. And that's what we want to be, and I think it should be reconsidered as to what the point system might be and what penalizations I feel are there. Any question?
Thank you. Comments? Council members, questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I would just add, I know Mr. Ross left, and But these are all pre-decisional numbers. We haven't voted on anything yet, so this was just an exercise to try to objectify the funding to each requestor. So we asked the staff independently to rank all the numbers and make the ratings. We did not influence it because, again, that would take away the objective nature of the exercise. So that's what they come up with. We also have an option you'll see later where because we have $192,000, we have $199,000 worth of requests. Obviously, we're behind $7,000 right off the start. So we have to decide, are we going to set aside money for capital investments in the future? And then how much reduction on those events do we have to make in order to make the budget? So thank you for that input. Any other open citizens' comments before we continue? Mr. McHenry? Yes, well, you can do that. Now, I'm going to have to ask you to use a microphone. Okay, all right. All right, Mr. Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So to kind of preface things for today, ideally, we would like to get this as close to finalized as possible today, so that would be the goal. And then there were lots of comments on the first work session, and so what we've done between then and now is come up with a draft that addresses all of those. So what I'd like to do as far as going through the budget, we highlighted everything in red that we changed. If we could just, I'll hit each point for what was changed and explain why it was changed, and then we'll just go page by page like that, if that's agreeable.
Absolutely.
Okay. Starting off, page 1, general fund revenue. The only change you'll see in red is aid to subdivisions, and that was a question about exactly what does aid to subdivisions mean, and I'm going to flesh that out a little bit. This comes from the state, and it's gone through several different versions through the years, but essentially the state receives funds for from banks, alcohol, gasoline, and income tax. And so what they take as a portion of those is just coming from the taxpayers, and they allocate it like per capita out to the cities and counties. So that's how that amount comes. And it has gotten adjusted in the past, how they determine that. So anyway, that's the gist of it for right now. That is, I think we budgeted $50,000 originally, and then we went back to see exactly if they've kind of come back with more accurate numbers. And so this is the accurate number for what we would receive based on the aid to subdivisions is $51,861. It's an increase from $50,000. So that's the only change on revenues. And moving to expenses.
Just before y'all flip that page,
Go ahead, Mr. McHenry.
one housekeeping item that might make it easier for the general public, and I think Ms. Julie could probably do this fairly easily, to put the heading at the head of the column of what the town's fiscal year budget is, which I believe it's 6/30 through 7/1. So this will actually straddle, obviously, 2 calendar years versus just the heading of 2022 budget, fiscal year 2022. That was just a recommendation. Is there any further clarification on 10-3210-071, which is the ITCP and BTCP, as far as what drives that revenue?
That's just the insurance program that the municipal association collects. I can get you more information about that, but that all comes in at the very end of June because we don't collect a business license from them for that.
Right.
So that comes.
So then the question was, and I think we asked this or hinted to it last time, it was $508,000 in fiscal year 21, but we're putting it at $400,000 for this year, where COVID should not have affected that, because people still have to carry insurance on their automobiles and homes. So,
Well, that was just based on what we received from fiscal year 20. You see that 398,953.
correct.
So, we budgeted 508,000, but that does not, what we received in fiscal year '20. So that was budgeted before we knew the total amount.
So you're kind of budgeting in the dark.
We're trying, exactly. I mean, because this money comes in at like June 24th.
Gotcha.
So that's basically all I can do is make a
Budget
best
based
guess
on the
based on
previous
fiscal
year.
year '20, and that's 398, so that's where that 400 came from.
And then I appreciate your input on aid to subdivisions, because that was a rabbit hole I went down. It's incredibly complex how they get to the aid to subdivisions. But that will be based off of the census,
Right.
the data on the census. And if that is accurate on the chart from the General Assembly and Legislature, we should be in the 120 range for their formula for 2022. And Miss Julie, I used the paperwork you gave me last meeting and then kind of really went down that rabbit hole. I can pass that on to you. And they
Yeah,
are
I mean,
gonna
I'm
base
going to
that on
rely on
the
what the municipal association says this is what the town is going to get. But certainly, I'm sure that will play a role. I just don't know when the General Assembly is going to take all that into account.
into account. And on their chart, which they give, a chart for population, and I just followed it out based on
Right.
the census number. And then 10-3110-060, building permits. Building permits should we not reflect a higher amount there for building permits coming out of a pandemic?
Well, I would like to, but, the actual right now is 108,000, and here we are at the end of April.
Sure.
So we don't have big projects. If they were a big project, we'd be reviewing those plans right now. And so just not seeing that, I wouldn't feel comfortable increasing that.
Any more than
I mean,
what?
I think that is a
Aggressive.
fairly optimistic, based on what we're getting so far this year, which is primarily residential building permits, because the schools that are being constructed are not, they get building permits through the state. And, I mean, those are huge construction projects, but unfortunately, and that's why you see such a high business license, is because of those schools, those contractors are getting business license, but it's not reflected in the building permits.
In the industrial park, we will benefit from those building permits, correct?
Yeah, the schools just fall into the state, because they're,
Right.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that was it, under income.
Thank you. Page 2, Mr. Williamson.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay. Let's see, governing body, we increased, recommended adding $10,000 for an AV tech during council meetings, so we increased that $10,000. Moving down, administration. Okay. Advertising and marketing. First off, and I'll get into this more when we talk about the manor, and there was a question about why do we move the additional 4,800 that was dedicated in the MPA agreement to the manor budget, but those are also tourism related, so actually could pay that out of the state ATAX. So kind of going back and forth, understanding what you're coming from, but we want to pay as much as we can out of the 30%. So you'll see later that 4,800 is noted as being out of the state ATAX. So we left 21.6, which is 50% there. So just note that. And then we increased from Modos Media, which is the Ray Smith, the video thing. So that's where that's reflected, and that increased to 30,000. Okay, dues and subscriptions based on, kind of look back again about where we are with organizations that the employees are members of, and they just increased that 1,000 to make sure, because we were getting some of the invoices and realized we didn't have, 1,000 was not going to cover everything. And then moving to page 3, okay, this is not a change yet, but we talked about it at the last council meeting, the movies in the park for community promotions, and that we would talk about it here during the budget session about whether to increase it for movies in the park. So we allocated $5,000 for April, May, June, and if it can, so Ms. Page had from July to October, a movie in the park each month. And then anticipating all that goes well, then we would see next year, April, May, June. So that would be a total of 7 movies in the park. So just wanted to get feedback from council about the funding for that. She has requested $2,000 per movie in the park, or if she did not do billboards outside the town, then she requested $1,000. So if we wanted to move forward with funding of that, I would say a maximum of $7,000. It just seems like an enormous amount for an event like that is primarily a community event, and just treat it as a community event and not so much a tourist event. But looking for some feedback and guidance on how to
Council
budget for
members,
that.
comments?
Mr. Williamson, of the budgeted $25,000, how much of that is earmarked for specific community promotions? Or is it just kind of a little bit of a wag?
It's a little bit just to have enough coverage. But as we continue to do things, we just want to make sure that we have a place where we can go to kind of cover things, because inevitably things do come up. They're great ideas, and we want to be able to do that. But
I tend to agree with you that $14,000 does sound like a pretty big number. If you said, okay, we were willing to do 7, but there's $2,000 kind of baked into that number, then you could bump it up by 5, and that's probably a little more palatable than an additional 7 or 14 or whatnot. And, you know, I understand the idea behind billboards, but we have a brand-new marketing person that might say that's not the best use for your funding. If you're going to advertise this event, you might not get the best bang for your buck. I don't know. I'm not an advertising expert by any stretch, but I would think that, you know, that would be something that you know, before I believe this council should make that decision, we should get a little more information on what's going to yield the best return if we did decide to advertise the events and allocate $1,000 per event in advertising. That's my feedback, sir. Thank you.
Councilman Griffin.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I don't think, I think she'll be fine with either budget piece, whether it's $1,000 per movie or $2,000. She'll still make it work. Per my conversation with Ms. Page, she'll make it work. She just want to see if, you know, the town is willing to sponsor. So that 2,000 is an ideal limit, because it gets you that coverage on those billboards, the digital billboards. But if we go with 1,000, I mean, I think, you know, unlike other events, she's not going to complain about not getting 2,000. She will make that work. I'm comfortable with moving forward. If the consensus of the group here on council is comfortable with moving forward with 7,000.
Other comments?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to try to
Go ahead.
keep up before y'all flip pages too far. General fund expenditures, Mr. Williamson, under the first section governing body, there's nothing budgeted for health insurance on line 183. Is that because you don't have any participants at this time?
correct. This is for the governing body, does not receive health insurance.
Okay. And there was money spent in 2020 in that line item. Was that for an old council?
I think that was the mayor had health insurance.
Yeah.
I think the mayor was the only one that was drawing
Not
on.
Mayor Ross. did.
Mayor Ross.
Yeah.
Not here, but back in 2020.
Okay. And my only input there would be there's an election coming up, and I don't know how that would affect you. But you may want to put something in there to cover you due to the results of that election in November. Yet, you know, who knows how that'll come out. Bank service charges, line 10-4120-200. And I only come at this because I run 4 small businesses, and there's a principle I use when I open a bank account, and we move a significant amount of money through bank accounts, as I'm sure the town does. I don't pay bank service charges. Why should the town? And if there's a credit card processing fee here at the manor, we need to pass that on to the renting individual. That's what I do. I take credit cards. And sometimes people pay for very, very large jobs by credit card. But they pay that processing fee. And NCF fees, I mean, that's $6,500 that we're paying a local bank for the privilege of handling the town's business. Something's off there. I mean, I can give you the name of our banks, and they know if they're going to handle CS Exteriors accounts, they're going to charge us to do so. So that just jumped out at me as a very large number. And then 10-4120-446, website maintenance. I was under the impression by previous discussions that that's something Ms. Hunter can handle, or certainly has the ability to handle. So that was my question there. And that's our current website?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, and then I'm good till we flip over to legal.
Did you want to make a comment about movies in the park? I know you stepped out. Okay. I mean, I agree with Councilman Sloan Griffin. We can handle the marketing of that, the advertising on social media as opposed to a static billboard is just my only opinion.
So increase that to
7,000.
7,000, just make it
is good.
7,000
Okay.
total, 1,000 per event. And then Steve, have we scheduled the events already in October, November? Yes? Okay, all right, thank you.
Correct. Okay. That was the only item I had for that page.
All right.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. Legal and professional IT support. Had a discussion about getting some additional services for GIS from Richland County. We have the agreement with them if we were to do some mapping of, work on some annexation. Anyway, so we increased that from 55 to 60,000. And then, we do have several potential legal costs. So speaking with Shannon, she recommended it be 60,000 to increase that. That was just from a recent conversation with her to make sure that we were okay, and she said that needs to be bumped up.
Which line is
Which
that,
one?
sir?
I'm sorry, legal outside counsel, 104150
Dash
199.
199?
Yes, sir.
From 40, so I would request increasing that to 60.
Comments? Any?
Is that good? Is that agreeable?
Anybody have any comments about it? No, we have 2 or 3 current
Correct.
lawsuits right
Yeah,
now.
so
Yeah.
just, and not knowing how that went, what year that's going to take on, I just kind of get prepared for that, unfortunately.
Because the reality is, you'll pay those fees either way. If you budget them or not, you got to pay them.
Correct.
You got to have.
Yeah, at least, be realistic
Yeah.
about it and plan for it.
I'm okay with that change. Anybody else?
Okay.
All right.
All right, well, I'll make a note of that. Okay, let's see, Public Works on page 5. Okay, vehicle and equipment, I just request to increase this from 25 to 27. It's based on looking at what the state has put out for how much, and the truck that Cecil currently drives, and to get an F-150 that was basically the same model with a crew cab would run it up over 25,000, so I just put it to 27,000. The maintenance and repair town hall. This is from a discussion at the last budget meeting because of Hoffman House, we just anticipated there'd be some repairs. We increased that 10,000 from what we had budgeted.
So we had 10 and now we're at 20.
Correct.
And do you feel that that would cover all the repairs that are needed currently?
I think so. It's a little bit of unknown. We haven't done any quotes or gotten them to look at, but I think that should, I think this will probably be an ongoing thing as we come forward, but I think certainly, there's nothing on the horizon right now that it's like we've got to get something done that we know of, but I do think when we get them to look at the electrical and the condition of that would certainly be sufficient based on just that aspect of the Hoffman House. But I think as we start to uncover an aging house, there may be additional expenses, but not in this fiscal year. It's not something we need to completely address.
Okay, because I'm of the opinion we can bump that number up a little more.
Yeah.
Again, we can always budget for an expense, and if it doesn't occur, that's fine. It's just, but like you said, you start digging into an old house, you find a couple of things, and next thing you know, your expenses have skyrocketed, especially in lieu of, and Mr. McKendrick can attest to this, expenses associated with materials, labor costs are up 2 to 3x over where they were last year. So I'm of the opinion to bump that number up a little more, maybe 25, just to give us a cushion. And again, the goal would be to come in under that. But, if we don't budget for it and then there's a major expense, I believe we'd have to pass a revised ordinance or something to bump the budget up. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe we
You'd
can
have to, well, it's a great point, but you got to remember, this is the unscheduled maintenance account. When we get to page 9, you'll see the roof and the porch and the HVAC. They're separate budgeted items.
Yeah, I understand that.
All right.
Yeah, I understand
That's
that. I'm just
20
saying,
we
when
have
you crawl under
capital
that house, you don't
budget
know what
too.
you're going to find.
Right.
Right, true.
If you feel like $20,000 is sufficient, then we can move on. If there's a possibility of running into an unforeseen problem, then I'd rather be a little more conservative and bump it up a little bit. Again, we don't have to spend it. That's my only comment on this page.
Okay.
Step out.
Certainly, if we're going to budget a little bit more, it won't affect, obviously, we're only going to spend what's necessary, but have it in the budget to have a little bit more cushion. That's fine.
History is 2,800, 4,600, 4,700 spent, and you've gone from 10 to 20.
I know,
I'm
I
not
think
opposed.
it's fine, but,
Okay, 25 then?
That's fine.
Then we'll move on.
That's
Okay.
fine, 25.
Mr. Mayor, a quick question
Go ahead,
in
sir.
Public Works.
Go ahead, please.
Mr. Williamson, under 10-44, 10-550, the vehicle and equipment,
yes,
y'all are talking about buying one vehicle?
correct.
Okay, if you did that out of this year's budget, which you have $23,000 in, could you
Right.
not go a little over this year and then budget $5,000 as a restricted account to put $5,000 in starting next year and moving on? Because you have 23 in this year.
Correct. Yeah, we could certainly look at it that way.
You're either going to forfeit the 23 this year or
Right.
put
Yeah,
27 in for next year, and you have it in the budget. And you're going to have a surplus this year anyway.
right. But, yeah, we were trying to get that vehicle as long as we could, and then here it being May, I think we can make it to the next fiscal year, and that's why we said, well, let's just, we've made it this far in this fiscal year, let's just put it on the next year's budget. But, so that, either way, it's going, the 23,000 goes into the fund balance.
Yeah, which is going to be my next question for the mayor and for you. So your fund balance grows, the pot at the end of the budget, and this is the first line item this is going to come up on, but there's 8 of them. If the council would act on capital improvements,
Yeah.
very much like this truck,
Right.
either spend the money or write the check
Right,
to a
into a
restricted
holding
account.
account, right.
There would be over $230,000 in restricted accounts, and that's over these 2 years alone.
Right.
So to not deal, and the vehicle line item is a perfect line item. There's $23,000 in there budgeted for this year. And council just sat there and watched
Right.
27 be budgeted for next year, and no one asked why you're not using the 23 that's there this year, because
Right.
it's going to go directly to your bottom line.
Well, you use the word restricted account. We believe in a zero-based budget, so it goes into the excess. That's why we have $2 million sitting in the bank, unrestricted, which means we can
Absolutely.
spend it how we want as opposed to having to spend it on a vehicle.
But you don't.
No, right, we keep it set
my
aside,
point
but
is-
we
my
may
point
be
is-
doing that if we do land acquisition, but go
Well,
ahead.
my point is, you really don't have $2 million in an account that you can do whatever you want with. Because roofs are going to have to be replaced,
Oh, yeah.
HVACs are going to have to be replaced, and cars are going to have to be replaced.
right.
So if you took the more conservative approach, that every year you budgeted 5,
Right.
at the end of the year, you wrote the check and you restricted that for an auto
Right.
account. Because at the end of the day, when you look at a land acquisition and you think you have a set amount of money to go spend, you really, it's inaccurate. At best, it's inaccurate.
Well, you're using a great example of a vehicle that you know is going to be replaced, as opposed to other
Absolutely.
budget items which are just not spent.
Well, and the ones I'm talking about are
Yeah.
vehicles that you know have to be
Yeah,
replaced.
you know that's gonna
I
happen.
passed
Yeah.
them today, and that vehicle should have probably been replaced last year.
I got you.
An HVAC system,
Yeah.
a roofing system, the carpet in the manor. Those are hard capital expenses that you could take the easy hit every year of whatever the line item would be if it was this auto, $5,000.
Okay.
Because you know that, for instance, if you spend the 23 this year,
Right. I
Beef it
get
up a
exactly
little
what
bit.
you're saying. So
Buy
June,
it.
June 30th, we write that $23,000 check to the new bank you're going to refer to us because it's going to save us $6,500.
they're
Yeah,
$6,500.
then I see exactly what you're saying.
And-
And then you're
and-
holding it in perpetuity, and now you got a check to write when the vehicle goes bad, or the HVAC goes out, or the
Right.
roof goes out. Right.
Instead of at the end of it all saying, we have $2 million in a bank account, and that's the pool we're looking
Right.
at, because there's all these things, whether it's playground equipment,
Sure.
carpet, paint, HVAC, that are going to hit you at one time.
Yeah.
I use restricted accounts all the time as well,
Yeah.
and I don't know if that's common in government.
Yeah.
But again, you just are going to approve $27,000 for a new car, and you're going to let the 23 roll
Into
So
the
you-
general fund,
and-
right.
Which is poor management of finances. Because you've already said to the public, we're going to buy a car this year, $23,000.
Right.
The public sees this, and you're not going to do it. It's going to show a line item next year that you need a new car. At some point, you got to buy the car,
Right.
and not let that 23 and then the 6 for carpet and then the 5 for HVAC all continue to roll into an unrestricted balance that you can say, we want to buy 150 acres, and we're going to use 3/4 of this balance. It's not an accurate balance.
Well, okay. We could,
That's-
well, I know. You're saying just restrict it and then use it in the future, but what we're doing is we're rebudgeting to the next year, so it's still available because it's coming up next year. That 23 rolled off, and now we have 27 as a holder.
You put the 23 in an unrestricted
Right,
savings.
right, that's
account.
right, because now you have that flexibility, which I see as an advantage, you don't, but, you know, this is government, not business, but, and so we have that fund balance to, but otherwise,
agreed.
we would have to stick by law to that one expenditure, that's all I say. I'd rather have the flexibility, not that we're gonna go out and write $3 million and go down to zero balance
Right,
on a
and I
piece of
think there's a
property.
huge
Yeah,
advantage to
Yeah.
say, for continuity of council,
Yeah,
that's this money is
now
restricted
that's another good point, okay.
this money is restricted for auto. So continuity of council, next council comes on and goes, we're going to buy whatever we want to buy.
Yeah.
Well, you can't use this because we have to replace vehicles every 3 years. And you can't do this
That's right.
because we've said long range, we're going to put a piece of playground equipment on.
Yeah.
And you can't do this because this carpet needs to be
You're right.
replaced. That's
a good point.
my only thing.
Yep.
Not that council doesn't have certainly the power or wherewithal to do financially whatever you
Yeah.
want, but at least it continuity of council to council. You can see it grow, you can spend it, and you can see it grow.
Right. All right,
That was
Mr. Wilson, we'll talk about that.
And
We
then
talked about it a little bit last meeting, too, about setting it aside, and instead of one general fund account, you now have 48 restricted accounts, but, okay.
And in Public Works, based on what Richland 2 is going to do with Bethel Hanbury Gymnasium, that should be addressed somewhere, because there's going to be expenses that come along with the gymnasium. Some of those will be capital, some of those will just be upkeep. And I don't believe it's reflected.
It's not, it'll be because the school won't turn it over to us officially until, I believe they said, fall of 2022? which
So
will
that
be
would be
fiscal
fiscal
23. So our next
23.
budget, we'll have to set aside. We could do that, but we don't have the signed deed.
Right,
Next year, we will.
All right, and
That's
Mr.
a good
Williamson,
point, so.
do we know, and I asked Mr. Sprouse, and he was unsure, but do we know what the COG is charging for the comp plan rewrite?
He has not given me that exactly, but he said in the 25 to 30 range. So I was hoping to, is that in this? I think that's in a previous page, but, yeah, so I'm waiting to hear from him on that. But, so hopefully pay some of that this fiscal year, because we have that, a line item for that, and then pay the remainder.
Great, that's where that question was based. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's on page 4 at the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Any update on the charging station?
Yes, that was on my next line. Let's see. Let me just go down my list here.
Okay.
At the last budget session, we talked about increasing beautification projects, $5,000. So that's went from 10,000 to 15,000. I didn't have it in the budget last time, but we talked about having some $750 for training of the employees in Public Works. Okay, charging stations. All right, so Sarah Lynn did a great job of researching exactly how much we pay and what the condition of them is. So, all right, charging stations, roughly $2,000 a year total in electrical bill. But I've talked with the owner of Holiday Inn, and I've talked to Mr. Sharp. They're both agreeable to taking over ownership of it. The Holiday Inn, he was just like, help me find someone who can repair the one that's not working. So I'll help him with that. But he said certainly agreeable to that. And then the Comfort Inn just has not returned my call yet. But so we got a plan to get those transferred over. So hopefully that will get addressed.
So, Mr. Williamson, you said we're paying $2,000 in electrical expenses. I know the one on Mr. Sharp's property is not functioning, and are there two at the Holiday Inn?
Two at the Holiday
And
Inn,
one
and
is
two at
not
the Comfort
functioning.
Inn, and one is not. So looking at.
So at least two are not working.
Correct, but they're, so we're still getting a $30-something bill for the one that's not working. So, yeah, I mean, so once we uncover that, we realize, what are we doing here? So we're gonna get this straight.
Okay.
And, but that's, estimated on what came in, it's 2,000. It's like $30-something for one, and then the other hotels, it's like between 60 and 80 each month.
Okay.
So,
We just need to add that, Sarah Lynn, to the next council meeting, the monthly meeting, so we
yeah.
can make a vote on that. Okay.
yeah, we just this was all kind of yesterday, getting a response from everyone. So, once we get we've got everything set up, and, we're just gonna say, okay, here's the template, and,
Have you fleshed out what turn it over to us means? Does that mean the town repairs it and it's in good working order, then they take over? Or do we just wash our hands as it is, and then the
I would
property
say
owner is responsible?
if they don't want it, then we just dismantle it and
Okay.
and get rid of it.
Okay, I agree with that.
Then, but yeah, I'm not interested in paying for repairs and then
Nor
turning it
am
over to
I.
them. Yeah, so I mean that's what's going to happen
Okay,
one way or the other.
I agree with everything you said. Thank you, sir.
Didn't you just say,
Go ahead, Councilman.
didn't you say, Mr. Williamson, that they said if you could find somebody to help them, you're gonna refer to repair it? So that means that they're gonna repair it.
Yeah, yes, that's right. I mean, I don't know, I haven't gotten enough in to figure out who the electrician, the regular electricians don't seem to want to work on it. So, it'd be some specialized electrician. So I have not gotten, I think Julie may have found somebody, but we haven't gotten very far in someone agreeing to do the repairs. But regardless, that's something we don't want to be in the business of if we're about to turn it over particularly. And there are grants that businesses can apply for to install new and possibly repair. So
And they're
I pass that on to them as well.
Yeah.
So,
Mr.
Let me ask you a question about this charging station. You know, I sent everybody this article the other day. Biden's administration, his infrastructure plan is to bring from 100,000 charging stations to 500,000. So obviously the money he's budgeting over the years into his infrastructure plan. So how is that going to affect like small towns and states where he's talking about putting more charging stations all around the interstates and, you know, through every state in the country? So he's going to quintuple his charging stations from 100,000 nationwide to 500,000 nationwide. You think states and governments or local municipalities are going to see a piece of that somehow to maintain or put charging stations in their municipalities?
Yeah, I don't know, but I would think that hopefully that would be something for small businesses to benefit from rather than having the local government be involved. Unless we had charging stations on town property, which could certainly do that, and I could see that. But the ones on private property, I think would be best.
I think that's the whole idea, is the town get out of the charging
Yeah.
businesses and let, you know, these businesses do it. If if the administration is gonna put money towards it, they'd be
Let them
crazy not to utilize it.
Absolutely. Unless it's on town property, then
Right,
that would, the
exactly.
onus would fall on us.
Councilman Griffin, sir?
So we talked about that in the last budget session. One thing, I can get you a contact that will get you any information you need for repairs to anything on the electric charging. So I'll do that immediately
Okay, thank
after
you.
the meeting. We can make that phone call then. Second, I think let private business keep what they got. I agree. That contact can also get you to help those private entities. But I think we're missing out on available funding if we don't put something here in this park. We're priding ourselves on the environmental, how we impact the environment. I think that adding one or two here brings somebody here off the interstate. Tesla or whatever to charge here, enjoy the park, eat, and return to the highway. So I think we get out of where they at, but we enhance what we got. We bring two back here and enhance this park with another capability of that environmental code piece that we're looking for in this town.
100% agree. We'll add it to this month's meeting. And,
Mr. Mayor, just clarification there.
Go ahead.
So on the comprehensive plan rewrite, which you heard last night from Mr. Sprouse, that is certainly a driver on a national level that they are pushing for charging stations in comprehensive plans and master plans. It's certainly going to be in ours, at least when he presents it. So, you know, the old adage is you put your money where your mouth is. So if we're going to budget for it, we want to send a clear message from the Planning Commission in that comprehensive plan rewrite before we present it to you. So just want to be clear what I'm hearing. Councilman Griffin said, you know, if it's on private property, let's let them do it. But you would, as a council, seek to possibly have available charging stations in the park?
Right, that's the vision here is the emergency call boxes installed, cameras installed, and as you're doing all that electric work underground, you add the charging stations.
So that wouldn't change
No, that's
where the
Councilman
cogs
Griffin,
go.
and, yeah, we've been talking about this, and it makes sense. While you're putting it all in, go ahead and put some charging stations in. Yep.
Mr. Mayor?
And look for the grants. Yes, sir, Councilman Brock.
I just want to offer one further point to the council that some people may or may not think about. If the town is going to assist the local businesses in getting their charging stations repaired and/or replaced, not necessarily financially, that would give those businesses somewhat of a competitive advantage for those particular individuals that own electric vehicles. It seems almost contrary for the town to do that and then put our own charging stations in the park. I'm not saying we don't, but if you're going to a business to use a charging station, one would use reasonable sense to think that you're going to frequent that establishment. Or you can come to the park and use it for free. It creates, it kind of, you're pitting the town versus the businesses when you're trying to give your businesses a competitive advantage, and then you take it right back from them the minute you put your own charging stations in the park. I'm not saying we don't. It's just something that needs to be considered if we want to add our charging stations and then turn everything else over to private businesses. You snap that competitive advantage away. Thank you, Mr.
All right,
Mayor.
yes, sir. Okay, Mr.
All right.
Williamson.
Moving to, let's see, page 6 is continues with public work, oh, no, I'm sorry, 6 is no changes on inspections and code enforcement.
Okay.
Parks and Recreation, okay. This is one that just recently kind of came about, because what I had tried to do was, I had an employee who was very eager to do all the mowing and weed eating out here, and which is great. And if I have an employee who wants to do that, that can do it, that's great. But he's also had some health issues, and I started to get concerned that if he were potentially were out, then we don't have a backup really very much. And so I had to go back to how we budgeted last year and essentially take that back to 22,500, and then the question about mosquito control. Okay, so we got a quote from Mosquito Joe just to say, okay, we got budget, can you give us some kind of estimate? So 5,000 would certainly cover what their service, but so I think we should leave that if we want to do that. But just so you know, Julie has coordinated with Richland County Factor Control, and they're going to come out here today and kind of see what they would do. So, so again, we're sort of in the middle of trying to figure out what we're going to do. So just budgeting with a private company for added mosquito control. So that's why that number has increased from I think we had 20,000 last time. I can't remember, but anyway, went back to 22.5 and then added the 5,000 to 27.5. So that's
that may change a little before our first reading, you're saying?
Yeah, and if it kind of depends on what Richland County
Right.
says, but yeah, I would say kind of anticipate if we want to do that as an expense, then might be worth keeping the commercial, just because we don't know the quality of what Richland County would be doing. Would they becoming frequently enough to this small park in the huge county that it would really be the most beneficial? So that's why we just talked to Mosquito Joe just to see what they would do, and they did it just from a map, kind of saying this is the area we need to cover, and so that's how they came up with that.
I think that's fine. And with movies in the park, which is certainly something we need. We don't,
Yeah, in the late afternoon, I can see that.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir, Councilman.
I'll just poll council. Does anybody up here use mosquito control in their personal
I
residence?
do not. I do, yeah, I have seen it done.
I do. I
Yeah,
use it every
okay.
year. There are some pros in having a commercial operation come in. They do have a set schedule. They come in once a month. If you see any mosquitoes or anyone calls, they will come in and spray again. So I don't want to say it's unlimited spray, but if Richland County says we're going to show up every 6 to 8 weeks, the mosquito spray is effective for about 4 weeks. If you spray and you get a heavy rain like we had yesterday, and you sprayed the day or so before, it can wash out. There are definitely some advantages in having a professional service come in and do it, again, because they will come as needed, whereas the county's going to come on a schedule. And if we need them to come, 3 days before movies at the park, and we're not scheduled till 3 days after, it's not going to happen.
Right.
So I think that it'd be a good idea to leave it in there. If we don't use it, okay. But I think that once that service is in place, I think you're going to get a very good response, especially when we can, that's a selling point, something we can advertise, mosquito-free park, So I think it's a great addition to the parks budget.
I agree. Mr. McHenry?
Mr. Mayor, a couple points. Line 10-4510-430, playground equipment and maintenance. 2,500 is scheduled this year. You've budgeted 2,500 next year. 2,500 we budgeted in 2020. Again, you have $5,000 in a pot if you're doing restricted funds. That 2,500 this year wouldn't be necessary. You'd have $5,000. Going down to the bottom of the page, 10-4510 and my number's a little skewed here. I think it's 550. Playground, park and playground improvements. In 2020, you had $12,000 you didn't use. In 2021, you had $12,000 you haven't used. That is the 25 you're budgeting this year. I'm telling you, if you do that throughout this budget,
Right.
you're going to end up with over $100,000.
Oh, I'm not opposed. You sold me, and especially saving 6,500 on bank fees.
Yeah, and
I'm all over that.
I just, but I just think it's,
Yeah.
and it's in the budget over and over, and I think we get, because I certainly do, you get so used to doing the same thing every year. And sometimes if you take a fresh approach at what you're trying to do, even though the money's in the bank, it's a fresh approach that gives a certain, what's the word I'm looking for? A fallback, because you're building for a playground equipment or a truck or whatever. But there again, there's two more examples on this page of.
It's the same thing you do for your
Same-
kids' college fund. You
same thing, same thing.
Add it every year. You don't just rebudget. Okay.
One question on that.
Go ahead, please.
Mr. Williamson, that item we voted on last night, though, about the Ryan Brewer fencing, that budget line item is going to come out of these from last year, correct? Right. Right, so just to clarify, this year budget, last budget year, we voted last night to spend it on that fencing on the playground to go ahead and fence it in, so. True.
Right. With you. I am with you.
It does.
Could I, Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, please, Councilman Griffin.
Mr. Williamson, in government, can we do the restricted funds?
Yeah. I know.
He needs a battery, I think.
Test.
I think you need a battery too.
Right.
I think you need a battery too.
Right, I understand, but he's talking about every single item that you budget, yeah. If you don't spend it, you put it in an account, so you don't have to rebudget it again next year, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's fine, it's,
Yeah, and just for clarification, it certainly wouldn't be every single account, but where you have.
yeah, Paul,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, like if you don't spend it in power, you're not going to write that to a restricted
Right.
account. But improvements.
Yeah.
And major purchases. And Julie's doing it now for capital, is just not to the degree that you're budgeting in your budget.
right, I got you. That's right. That's right, okay.
So, I mean,
No, and it exists. I'm sure there are municipalities that do exactly this. We just go to municipal association, they show us, and that's what we vote on to do, I would assume.
Yeah.
Okay. Page
okay.
8.
All right, page 8, okay. I had some additions for the outside agency requests that you'll see in red there from the last meeting. We talked about adding 6,000 for the Bethel Hanbury Athletic Association and 1,000 for the Blythwood Soccer Club. But I know there was additional discussion about how to actually, if y'all wanted to modify any of this based on having a total bottom line.
Right. So that comes to 37,000.
Right.
And in the past, we were 30, 22, and 34.
Right.
So is there a cap that the council would like to propose, or any debate on the new funded items?
I'm good with leaving it at 37.5. They're all worthwhile expenditures.
Comments?
I'm good, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Fry?
If it please the council, I'd like to just point out the item 1048-10-499 GBCC. As I alluded to before, that.
You speak into the mic?
Is it broken? Is it turned off?
Hello?
Yeah, thank
There
you.
you go.
What's the line number again?
They're all the same.
Oh, that's right, because.
1048-10-499 relative to GBCC.
Okay,
referring back to, as I alluded to before, 17.5, that was a number prior to. But as you're showing, annual sponsorship at 5,000. I distributed at last council meeting to each of you guys, or councilmen, a breakdown where that sponsorship, how we allocate it, and that is indicative of all of our sponsorships, to where you do get something in return in the fact of, you know, the golf tournament, the gala, the breakfast sponsorships, et cetera. And to reiterate that we as a chamber do pay rent for the building when we hold our breakfast, which is a little over $1,600 a year. So the net return and allocation, et cetera, we feel like that indicates our partnership, and, you know, just don't know, you know, how that relates to these other allocations that you do with other organizations. I think that sets us apart a little bit.
Okay, thank you. So the changes were, okay, the Bethel-Hamburg Athletic Association?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Just looking for some clarification. The allocation to the Bethlehem-Berry Athletic Association, is that predicated on the notion that they will potentially manage the facilities when it comes online? If and when it comes online?
Councilman Larry Griffin, sir?
No. It's not predicated on that.
Okay.
What it is predicated on is the fact that there could be a possibility that happens, but it's really going to determine what the town decide to do with the building.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just a clerical question. This is probably more for Ms. Julie than anything else, but could we assign individual line items to these? So you could pull
Put a
history,
B, C, D, E at
and
the
they could
very
be a
end.
subset of if you're pulling a history or everything listed under.
And then the Blythwood Soccer Club, Councilman Brock, would you like to tell us about that one more time?
What it is, it's a rec league that participates, or is a club rec league soccer that was using fields here in the park in Cobblestone. They have now since been relocated to the park because of some inconveniences, according to the Cobblestone representatives. Has about 150 to 200 kids that come in, Steve, at least 3 to 4 days a week. I know that they have practice Monday, weather permitting, of course. Practices Monday night, Tuesday night, Thursday night, games on Friday. They are continuing to expand, to add players. 50% or so are outside of the town. Don't have an exact breakdown. I can get that for the council. But it does bring people in for multiple hours, weeks on end. They are looking to expand. They are looking for a permanent home. They are looking to purchase permanent equipment that they can possibly store up here at the park on the fields behind, I guess that's in front of the manor, assuming we get no further vandalism. They have volunteered and have repaired the fields. Unfortunately, we saw what happened after that. Very disappointing. But it's a true Blythwood-based rec league for a lot of kids, all ages from 4 to 5 up to 13 or 14 when they age into middle and high school.
Okay.
So it's a great event, or a great organization.
All right, thank you. Mr. Williamson?
I don't have anything else.
Okay, go.
Is that good?
Go ahead.
And this may be a typo, but was there a reason that the Christian Association Bridge this year, $6,500 was budgeted, $5,000 was given?
That's an older one.
We have a newer
paid
one.
the additional.
You just haven't written it out
We
yet?
have written it out. We have not, I think you have an older version you're looking at.
Oh, I got you, okay.
Yeah, they match, yeah, okay.
Okay.
All right,
just,
page 9.
just to point out here, the revenues, expenses at the bottom
Yeah.
will change based on what we've said here with movies in the park, outside council, and Hoffman House.
Okay.
So that number will change.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Well, he asked for facility use, so that's what I took his request to be. Can he use this room?
He also asked for $2,500
Yeah.
to purchase the program for the
Well,
community.
he said anyway, we're going to talk about that, but I'd have to come out of community promotions because it's too late now.
Yeah.
And if we open that door, then you have to let other people come in who, didn't meet the February 3rd cutoff. So, Mr. Fry?
Yes, excuse me, on that same subject, facility use for the room, as I indicated before, for our breakfast meetings, and don't get me wrong, I think soccer club is a wonderful thing. Would they be paying for use of the field? Begs the question, because I refer back to page number 1, while we're still on general funds, where it says, let me see the line item, park and amphitheater rentals total for the year F21 year-to-date was $3,600. And I know we as a chamber, for our events, we pay $2,000. I'm just seeing a little bit indiscriminate there that there's only $1,600 from other sources.
Okay. All right, Mr. Williamson?
Okay. All right, moving on to just the capital improvement fund. No changes since last time. So then, state accommodations tax, just want to point out again that we...
You're on page 10 now?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Unless there are some questions. Added the manor portion of the MPA 4,800 is as part of the 30%.
Okay.
We've just kept in there about the visitor's guide as we're working on the cost for that. That's the only change. Okay. LAT, no changes. Okay, now kind of get into, really need to kind of jump a little bit. We don't necessarily have to look at the pages, but just know that, all right, the manor, it might be worthwhile. We look at the DOCO Manor revenue on page 14, and then we can talk about H-tax, because that's directly related. If you look on page 14.
Ms. Williamson, can you go back to page 11? I'm looking at available local accommodations, and it shows 48,169.
That's right.
With the proposed of 76,500.
Okay.
That's
$30,000
deficit.
We've gone through so many iterations of this. Best thing to do is just look at the spreadsheet, because the spreadsheet is accounting for LAT and H-tax, and I have those here. And so I know. Well, how about when we get to that, let me just take a break, and I can distribute all that out,
Okay.
and then we can look at all the options. So maybe I can just explain to you where we are with the manor and how that affected the H-tax, and maybe take a quick break. I can distribute all this, and then we can look at the different options if that works. Page 14, DOCO Manor facility rentals. As y'all recall, we said 120, which is a low number. But we were sort of under the thought that we were going to be hurt by COVID, but got with Steve and looked at how many bookings we've got. So we bumped that up to 180, and that is based on the bookings, but it's also, I think, need to make clear that that's pretty much about the maximum that the mayor is going to be able to make, because I have another spreadsheet that shows how many, all the events that the town is putting on. It's a loss of potential revenue of $52,500. So just keep that in mind, that 180 is about where we could, the maximum that we could do if we're going to continue to do these events. So we said 180, and then we shifted the town usage, which was on the transfers from general fund line, and because that's a facility rental, we are paying for that. So bump that up to that line to accurately reflect, because that number affects the other lines of how we're paying the employees based on a percentage of this. So it needs to accurately reflect the usage of the facility. So anyway, arrived at 192. And so what that does also is it reduces significantly the transfer of H-tax to cover the loss of the manor, which therefore leads to a lot more H-tax available for events.
Sure.
So,
Mr. Williamson, the $12,000 town usage, that's not the all-in cost. That's just for renting the facility, correct?
yep, and so we
Because
did estimate
you'll have
that.
staff, you'll have
Yep, so that's
other
reflected.
amenities and whatnot. Yeah. So it's more than that. Yes, I agree.
That's right. That's right.
And also, on other line items, we are reflecting the additional staff that has to be hired during our town meetings, security, allocations for electric, water, all that stuff. Are we also paying for that? Which we should. Okay.
Just the rental, I mean,
Yeah, that's included in the rental, right,
But
Steve?
staff.
Yeah, that's the way I costed it out.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Electricity is not a lot, staff's not a lot, but it is
But it's
included.
incorporated in that number?
Yeah, in that 12,000.
Okay.
And what about these donations in kind? Like, for instance, that motorcycle club's coming, they're paying 400, whereas normally you would have charged more. So do you write that off as a donation in kind, or whatever term we're gonna use?
that was part of the 12,000.
No, I'm using an example of other agencies. Like, there's a motorcycle club, Veterans Motorcycle Club, they needed a place. Steve settled on a number for a cost of rental, which gave them a discount. And then as long as we capture the discount for your budget, we're fine. Or Mr. Hanna, say we're gonna let him do his program here. Well, you're gonna donate that whole rental cost, you're gonna write it off. Or are we doing that?
I don't think so. I don't think we have a separate account or line item.
Okay, we probably need to look at, well, like, because Councilman Brock's right, we gotta start getting your finances together, even if you run at a deficit. But every time you donate use of this place
Right,
and you
right,
lose money,
right.
we have to capture that somehow as a donation.
Before
Okay.
before COVID, I kept a list, a spreadsheet of all that and
Okay.
costed it out.
Yeah.
The free use of this facility really dropped for COVID, and now we're
Okay.
starting to come back out of it. So,
All right, we'll talk more about it, but we
Yeah.
do start capturing it on the books.
well, yeah, we can quantify it.
Yeah, okay. Mr. McHenry.
Yes, I don't want to muddy the water, but your facility rental, I see where that math makes perfect sense to me. Here's my question, and this is going to bounce back to Mr. Fry, who, the Rib Fest. Through this process, if a Rib Fest application comes to you, that Rib Fest application for the amphitheater rental should be equal to or greater than the biggest wedding you could hold in this manor.
That's right, we talked about this. You're exactly right.
So if that is the case, it is an H-tax qualifying expense. So the amphitheater rental, when I bring you my application for my event, the first thing you should look at is, are you capturing 100% on a Saturday of what the biggest
Right.
bride and the biggest wedding here can be? On every Saturday application for the amphitheater. And you're not asking the chamber to pay for it, because if they're giving you an H-tax application, it is in the funds they are asking for.
Yep.
So you have a pocket of H-tax money that can be directly used to balance the manor's budget. You need to be doing that in every case.
Right.
I only see 3 or 4 big events: the Rib Fest, Oktoberfest, 4th of July.
Right.
That's not even on a Saturday. And if they don't want to pay that amount, then move the event to Friday.
Absolutely. And you and I talked
We
about
did.
that, and we also, and I'm going to bring before this council soon, is instead of doing a set fee, it may be a percentage of gross revenues, is
Correct.
the rental fee.
Yep.
So Mr. Fry's Oktoberfest makes, I don't know, make up a number, $50,000, the town gets 15%, and that's the deal. Doesn't matter how much they make.
Yep.
But we're covering our expenses here and then some.
Your hard
Yeah,
expenses.
now, I don't know if that's legal. Can a municipality do that? We have to discuss it with.
But you could certainly establish the rent for the amphitheater on a Saturday, the
that's right.
same this would
Yeah.
be in Mr. Hashtorock.
Yeah. We're getting very
Wins.
close to making that happen because we all understand we're losing. When we
that's what I
have an
mean,
event
as-
here, we're losing this.
And you're moving, it
Yeah.
may seem confusing, but you're moving to close loopholes
Yeah.
that will make the manor self-sufficient,
right.
which I believe should be the ultimate goal.
Absolutely.
And then again, Mr. Williamson, and this is before your time, so Ms. Julie may be able to help answer the question. But on Doco Manor revenue, 51-8980-099, transfer from H-Tax in fiscal year 2020, $28,999. It doesn't appear that transfer was made. It doesn't appear it was made yet in 2021. I just do not understand something that is revenue negative, how you don't make that transfer. That is beyond me, because that is direct money that comes into the town's bottom line. And it could have been made, but
Yeah. I think it was. Julie, don't we transfer $89,000? It's not reflected here. I know, but what is that called? Yeah. Right. Well, you didn't have to because they're running a surplus. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So it depends on what it is, and we have to balance the books, so we transfer. It's not reflected here, I see your point.
yeah, but
It will be reflected later, though, you'll see it.
okay.
But thank you, yeah, we gotta fix that too. But I think with these set-asides, it'll be the right answer, okay?
Okay, so just going back to that specific line, so the manor expenditures, the transfers from H-Tax to balanced manor expenditures is greatly reduced based on the estimate of additional revenue. So it went from 87 something to 35,141, and then that allowed more money for H-Tax. So that's the background on that. Let's see, the advertising, I can't remember, let's see what the, I think that stayed the same, but we moved the MPA to SAT, and that was the line that, I think we may have had the 4,800 in there before.
Okay.
So that was the only change. Okay, so,
Recess.
yeah, let's take a quick break,
Motion
and then
for a
I will
quick break.
distribute all this out, and then we can,
Been properly motion second for a 10-minute break. Let's get back soon. We got to pick up the pace, so we'll end on time. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. All opposed? 10 minutes so we can get going.
No, I'm not. That's right.
Sooner the better. think it's about the 30-minute mark. That's where it starts. When Mr. Williamson started looking down at his fingernails. He's like, oh, God. What's my mayor doing? Yeah, here's what it is. Beat me up all you want. Don't lie.
All along.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be fine. Yeah, we're gonna pick up the piece here unless somebody really needs to stop the train, but, and if Rich McHenrick talks about that fund set aside again, oh. I'll call the sheriff.
Will he ride in on his horse?
Yeah, he will.
From the rodeo?
That's right. We're slow, okay. Okay, call us back in order so we can finish our budget workshop part 2. Mr. Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, so moving on to the H-Tax and LAT expenditures for event applications. All right, so is April 30th was Friday, so that's the end of that month. We get all the revenues, and Julie spent all day Monday getting this budget up to date to show that. So it's really helpful from this perspective, among others. But okay, so if you look at H-Tax, go back to page 12, H-Tax revenue. Okay, so we put 400,000 as the estimated revenue because of previous years, and the highest we previously gotten was 395. Okay, but now we see where we are currently at the end of April is 387. Okay, so and I noted it here on my little memo at the bottom as we're talking about which way we're going to go with the applications, is to just point out that as we get more information about revenue, we can do a better job of estimating the next year. All right, so if we're at 387 now at the end of April, and we've got 2 more months, if that trend continues, we would be around 450 or a little bit more. Okay, so we budgeted 400. So I think one way of helping out in this spending on these applications is I think we can reasonably adjust that to, say, 410, which is obviously still a conservative estimation of revenue, and that would cover the requests for the applications. Just want to point that out, that I think that based on what we have here, we could do an increase of estimated revenue of H-Tax. And then so just keeping that in mind as kind of a backdrop as we look at the options. You have a question?
Yeah, on what basis are you looking to make that increase from 400 to 410?
Oh, well, based on the current revenue for
Okay.
this fiscal year at 387, and, dividing that by 10 months times 12, say, okay, we're going to be at over 450. I mean, I don't want to put the budget at that amount necessarily, but I do think that we're at 400. It was a very conservative, and I think we could reasonably bump that up. So and I think that helps as we're looking at all our expenditures.
And I do know that there will be multiple businesses coming online in next fiscal year. There will be a new hotel, a couple of new restaurants. That doesn't necessarily mean that number is going to be bumped up, because you go from one, you don't go to the other.
And the other restaurants closed, and all,
Right.
yeah, but so certainly, yeah.
Okay.
And knowing that there are, we got, but there's one restaurant that hasn't even gotten construction approval yet. So that would be
Okay.
late in the fiscal year. So I wouldn't want to base too much on that. Although the hotel, obviously, that's an A-tax, not H-tax revenue. So
Okay.
Okay, before we move on, let's go up to number 1 real quick, because,
Yes.
and just have the council members look at this. So the scoring system that we're starting to use, nonprofit, I think we agree on, in-town events, and stop me if I'm wrong, council members. In-town organization, multi-day, stay in the hotels, Franklin ratio, which Mayor Ross called it that years ago. It's the ratio of the money we donate versus the number of tourists that come back. So that's,
And
and that's
just
kind
so-
of a tourist ratio. I think that's the same thing.
Well, based on those applications, Steve and I kind of looked at, there's a total number of attendees, and then there's a total number of tourists. So,
Okay.
based on Franklin ratio, it was total number of
Yeah, total
attendees,
number.
and then we broke it down even
Okay.
further to the tourist ratio, because it's a tourism event.
And then net income, which former Mayor Ross spoke about, and then new events are funded at 100%, which Councilman Brock does not.
Right, and that's
I
just
mean,
how
and
this.
I kind of agree with him. Maybe it's 50% until
Right.
they prove their.
Yeah, that was
They're
just,
proof of principle.
that's just what is reflected on that particular score sheet. And I do want to add, it didn't really apply necessarily in this year because of applications, but Councilman Griffin said at the last meeting that we certainly need to recognize minority and women
Right, 'cause-
owned or operated events, and I would add that, I would recommend adding
That's
that
because
for
that is a
future.
non-income
If we're going
generator,
to
yep.
solidify this as the way that the applications get evaluated, then that would certainly need to be in there and have a scoring associated with that.
Which event was that?
There's no specific, because we kind of looked, we said we were going to add it, but now I was looking, none of the events would have, their scores would change based on that, as far as I could tell. And, but I'm saying,
Yeah.
as we create this template and rules, I would just recommend we add that as well.
Go ahead, Councilman Brock. Sorry.
I was reading something and I really didn't hear what you said. What were you, I hate to fall on that sword, but it's the truth. What are you looking to add to it as far as revenue versus non-revenue generating? Well, I completely missed. what you said. I'm so sorry.
Just whether the event is operated by minorities.
Oh,
or
okay,
women
okay.
As an
Sure.
additional scoring, the community events, the cultural events, are separate.
Right. Well, it really didn't, to me, it didn't have anything to do with minorities or women. It's the Historical Society puts these events on and they're non-income generating. They don't sell, it's all free for the public. That's why I didn't want to take from them, because they have no other way to fund it. In other words, if we don't fund it at the appropriate level, they can't do it. So I didn't want to lose those cultural events based on that.
Well, I
But
think
will-
that Councilman Griffin was actually talking about like event, like a concert or something.
Brand new events
Yeah,
coming in.
Right, and that are minority operated.
oh,
or-
okay, I
yeah.
got you.
Women owned,
Yeah.
veteran owned.
No, that's fine.
Those type.
Yeah, but
I
that,
thought we were
anyway.
talking about Historical Society.
Right, and so I did leave that at 100. Okay, so that was.
Well, I didn't want to, I wanted to finish with this. And based on Mr. McKendrick's statements, we do need to look at exactly what we talked about, is whenever an event comes here, whatever Steve would get here normally, and whatever the amphitheater, that event needs to give us at least that much money. Because right now, they're arbitrarily paying us $1,000, which does not cover the $8,000. How much do you make, Steve, on a full Saturday in June?
4,200.
Okay, so 5,200 would be the minimum they would pay to put on their event. So that's why I think we ought to move to a percentage of your gross revenue. So a big concert comes, good on them. They make $50,000, their fee is 15% of that, or whatever our number ends up being. So we make sure we clear, and the DOCO Manor does not lose revenue, because we'd rather have a concert instead of a wedding. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, please, Councilman.
No, I thought that was part of the, I know Mr. McKendrick said it up here today, but I thought that was part of our original policy piece.
Well, we had numbers. We
Yeah,
hadn't gotten, so you're right. We've talked about this before. How much would an event here have to pay? And we were talking about the Big Red Barn Retreat
Yeah, it
concert.
was like having this, the amphitheater and the manor,
Yeah.
just get it for the day.
That's right.
Everything is in a package. And I think we were talking on estimated numbers like 5,000
Yeah.
for both.
That's
But we
right.
didn't have actual figures in, because they were still in policy piece,
right.
waiting on you and Steve to meet on that.
Yep. And that's why we're trying to get the council's input to see, is it going to be a scale percentage, 12, 15% of the event, or is it going to be just $5,000 to cover both?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Griffin. Go ahead, Steve.
I do want to make one comment. Right now, we're having a lot of events in the park, but they are not events that generate a lot of revenue. Most of them are 501c3s or church events, and they don't pay a lot of money, to rent the amphitheater. And I just don't see where they're going to be able to make up the shortfall for if the manor can't be rented.
I'm with you. It depends on what it is.
Yes.
If it's a movies in the park, that's not loud and obnoxious, so you can still have a wedding here.
Right, movies in the park.
Yeah.
The problem comes on a Saturday event when it's all day.
Okay,
Like Veterans Day. Go ahead, Councilman.
I'm sorry, Mr.
No,
Mayor.
go ahead.
Let's clarify, because I think the water's getting a little muddy here. If you want to talk about a church event that comes into the park on Sunday morning, how many times are you selling the manor on Sunday morning for weddings? Probably very minimal.
That's right.
Okay, so I think we have to establish what our prime revenue generating opportunities are, and those are the areas we need to focus on maximizing the revenue. If it's Fridays and Saturdays, then those are our 2 days. I kind of look at it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Hessrock, but you have no problem renting the manor on Fridays for rehearsal dinners and Saturdays for weddings, and that it sells fairly easily.
Right.
Okay. It's the other times that it may be a little challenging. And if the park's used on a Monday evening or a Thursday afternoon, are we really missing out on any revenue in the manor on those afternoons? I mean, it certainly doesn't seem equitable to say, hey, you're using the amphitheater for 2 hours on a Sunday morning, you're on the hook for $5,200. That's not equitable.
Absolutely. And what I've tried to do all these years, for example, we have a church service on Mother's Day. They're going to be here from 9 to 1. A lot of times I can work a park event around a wedding. But on a Saturday, when you have an all-day event that may start at 10 and go till 6 or 7, those are the type of events that it's difficult to work a wedding around.
Then those are our bullseyes. Those are the ones we have to tackle first. And then we catch everything else.
Yeah.
Move the movies in the park to Friday instead of Saturday, because if they're here and they run a wedding away, you lose revenue.
Yeah.
Well, movies in the park, I mean, we're going to have movies in the park on a Saturday this month where I'm going to have a wedding, but movies in the park, because the movie will probably start 8:20, the wedding ceremony will be 4 or 5 o'clock. I can get the people from the ceremony back in, so I could probably work the movies in the park around a wedding. But if you have an all-day event, like we have one on May 29th, which is a 501c3 doing a carnival. Now, I don't have a wedding on May 29th. That's when it gets hard to do. An all-day event on a Saturday. Saturday is the day really that we're in conflict with.
And Mr. Williamson earlier said that there were 10 events that on Saturdays, I believe, that could potentially lose out on $50,000 and plus in manor generating revenue. That's what we have to attack. How do we make that number much smaller in anticipation of going to zero?
Right.
Or a positive number, actually.
Yeah, I can comment on this because I did the analysis. Right now, going to the next fiscal year, we have 8 Saturdays. Now it's down to 7 because Phil is giving up August 6th and 7th. So it's 7 Saturdays right now where I can't have a wedding in the manor. Oktoberfest, Ribfest. The town has 3 Saturdays. One is July 3rd. Okay, we're going to have our big celebration. Well, we can't have a wedding on July 3rd. Veterans Day may be a conflict on a Saturday. Maybe I can do an indoor wedding, maybe I can't. There may be another a nonprofit event on August 14th. So holiday market is another one. That I give up a Saturday for the holiday market. They pay us $1,000, but it's our own money. It's H-tax money. So right now, and these type of events restrict the ability of the manor to make maximum revenue.
So as long as we charge at least $5,200, you're covering both entities.
Yeah, that would be great if we could get it.
I think let's table this and we'll talk about it at the monthly meeting because we do need to decide. So
Yeah.
we're deciding how much money to appropriate, but we haven't decided what the fee schedule is for
Correct.
them to pay or us to
Right.
write off as a donation.
Right.
account. Okay. All right. So we'll have that ready for the May meeting to at least discuss as a discussion item. All right, Mr. Williamson.
Okay. So, looking at the two options on this memo,
Right here.
yeah, so, yeah, these are reflected in the two spreadsheets I handed out. So the first was based on the scoring, and then the second is based on just a percentage across the board, but keeping the cultural events at 100%.
Can we move those to community promotions?
Yeah, well, the only thing about that is they are H-tax eligible, so it is good to kind of keep that in the,
Okay.
we could do that in.
No, that's fine. I
where
get
the
it.
way the farmer's market is. If you see on H-tax expenditures where it says farmer's market town events, we could add additional line item that says cultural events and move those there. If
And
you
that
want,
way they'll
on
be
page
safe
12.
from any cuts in the
Yeah,
future.
they won't be on
Yeah.
the spreadsheet necessarily. So we can do that,
Mr. Williamson,
yes.
on this budget, on the option number one, does this total amount available, does that incorporate the additional 10,000 that you recommended for H-tax?
No.
Well, then there's your 10,000 right there. If we bump from 400 to 410, the summation of Veterans Day, Blythwood Women's History, and Black History Month celebration does not exceed 10,000. You wouldn't have to move them.
Yeah, so that would certainly.
Yeah, no, I was just asking, can we move them off of this?
Yes.
And they're no longer a debatable item, they just stay?
Yeah, one way or the other, they're going to come out of H-tax.
That's right.
So I think it would, to get exactly what you want, it would be to add a line item similar to farmer's market and town events, where it would be separate from tourism-related.
Right, exactly.
So, yeah, we can certainly do that, but, okay. So,
All right, so just my opinion, I'm looking at the percentage reduction.
Okay.
The second sheet with the 95 through 70.
right,
So you have 192 to allocate. If you
Correct.
cut everybody by 5%, with the exception of the three at the bottom, you would spend 180, you would save 11, well, you would have remaining 11,000.
that's correct.
You cut them 90%, you're going to have a 21K set aside. 80%, you have a $40,000 set aside. And so why aren't we trying to set aside money? That's our decision. Are we going to do capital purchases, capital improvements? Then what would that number be, and how much do you want to save every year going forward? If you cut everybody by 25%, you would save $50,000 every year to then allocate in a safe, set-aside fund to,
Yeah. One thing I would like to ask is, Mr. Williamson, in your 95, 90, 80, 75, 70 ratio, keep in mind, several of these events would be in the amphitheater, and thus their application could be increased for full rental here,
right,
which would take up some of the surplus. You follow what I'm saying?
yes,
Okay.
exactly.
We put a new application process. So assuming that these are the only funded events we're going to have during this budget year, correct? Because we're not taking any more applications. Application deadline is passed. Okay, so we're looking at what we're looking at on both spreadsheets. And last year, we took money out of fund balance to help fund events, which ended up not being spent on some of the events, turned their money back in. So the fund balance from last year to this year grew $53,000, from $683 to $730,000. So assuming that thing, that right there, we're looking at requested amount of $199,200 at full request, which means we would only need $6,859 out of fund balance to fund these at 100%, which would, according to Mr. McKendrick's thing, would help offset the rental in the park on some of these other events that we had. If we're cutting these events down, if we funded them at 100%, that money could be used to pay back the rental here where we're losing revenue. And we would only be tapping into our fund balance by less than $7,000 to fund them at 100%. Now, you know where I stand on it, so I'm gonna get off my soapbox.
Right, but we are talking about adding another 4,200 on their rental, so they would have to account for that. But that would be okay as opposed to cutting them by 25%. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. That makes sense, Mr. Fry, for your organization? I just want to get citizen input here. If the council were to fund you at 100% of your request, but then on the backside, say you're going to pay 4,200 more for the Doco Manor rental, would you be able to make that happen?
Well, in answer to your question, obviously, I'd have to revisit the budgeting of it and so on and so forth. But I'm just at a loss because I had to borrow Mr. Hastrock's sheet. I didn't have that, and, and I had previously requested how the point system worked, which I have not seen yet. But bottom line is, what I'm hearing there's a lot of subjectivity rather than objectivity. And just case in point, in looking at the total budget, I believe it's 1.8 million. And if I add correctly the expenditures for the manor and park and all the way through, comes to a total of a little over $1 million, which is more than 50% of the budget and the total budget. And I agree totally that this is a wonderful asset, but is it an albatross? And if we become subjective, and I would suggest to you that as one particular event that had been held here a couple years prior is now going to be held in Sagra Park this year instead, subjectivity will cause you to lose revenue. And okay, it may open another wedding date. I don't know, but to say that, I'm going to take my ball and go home, I'm not saying that. Others have. And again, we just want to be partners.
Okay, council, any opinions on this? The more you cut, the more you save, therefore we can set that aside for capital purchases. If you don't want to set aside for capital purchases, you spend 100%, we just have to take 7,000 out of the fund balance.
Mr. Mayor.
Sir, go ahead, Councilman Brown.
You and I ran collectively on the idea of bringing recreational facilities to this town. If nothing more, improving the ones we have. In business, in my opinion, there's really only two ways to increase your bottom line. You increase your revenues or you cut your expenses. It's pretty simple. I understand Councilman Ballman's position. I equate it to robbing Peter to pay Paul. We haven't improved our financial position. We're just moving funds out of one account into another. It hasn't made anybody any money. We've just taken money out of one to shore up another fund. Under this scenario, if we're going to continue to spend 100% of all the monies that we have, unless we increase our H-tax revenues, we're not going to have any room for additional events. We're just going to have the same events, wash, rinse, repeat, wash, rinse, repeat. Same events. Not saying they're bad, but there's no additional room for anybody else. And then next year, what happens if we have 199,000 requests this year? If that doubles next year, because we say we are open for business, and now we have $400,000 in requests, and let's just say H-tax remains flat, just for our accounting purposes. Now we have quite the pickle, because we have established a precedent where we fund everybody that comes in front of us at 100%. Whether we take it out of H-tax, general fund, accommodations, wherever. And funding at 100% doesn't save us any money, it actually costs us a little money. I like the idea of limiting first-time events to 50%. I want to see proof of concept. You can have an event that loses money, trust me, I know, and still show that the event is successful and that the proof of concept is there. So that's the first recommendation I would make. Because individuals, whether they're for-profits, not-for-profits, in my opinion, they have to have some skin in the game. There's no free lunches on Wall Street. We can't continue just to fund everything at 100% and expect to improve our financial position. I believe that the manor should receive all eligible revenues, the manor and the park, as collective, because I don't look at, one should not compete over the other. You have a symbiotic relationship. One should benefit the other. If one of Mr. Fry's events rents the park, the amphitheater, and pays for the manor, he should be able to use this manor. He should be able to expand into that field. He should be able to use the entire complex for his event, which should allow you to make your event bigger and better. You shouldn't have to turn away anybody, because I believe in your report you turned away some barbecue vendors. Now you've doubled the size of your footprint. That's a good thing, potentially. More trash to clean up. I'll help. So if we want to strive to make the town more fiscally responsible, we have to up our revenues, which we may have no control over, or we can reduce our expenses, which we absolutely have control over. So the first recommendation would be to cap a new event at 50%. If they come back, they have a knockout session, then we'll revisit it the next year. They're eligible. Everybody should be eligible except first-time events for 100% funding. Then you go down from there. But if we don't have budget an earmark for 100%, we have to look. I don't necessarily think you look at, well, this event did well, so we cut them. I echo what Mayor Rawl says, and events that are successful should not be punished. That's wrong. But at the same time, just because you are successful doesn't necessarily mean you get 100% of requested funding either. We have a set amount of monies. Do we want to save any money? You could follow the percentage, and that's even. It doesn't single any individual or any event out. It's just a straight line cut. Or do we want to look at piecemealing it, which, if I'm not mistaken, the idea behind the point system was to eliminate any bias. There are parts of it that can easily be qualified, and there are parts of it that are not. There's parts of it that are easily quantified, and there are parts that are not. So, again, the first recommendation, new events, 50%. See where that leaves us, and then if we want to say we want to save 15, 20% of SAT funds, then that's our number. Maybe it's more. Maybe if you cut some of these first-time events down to 50%, maybe that opens up a little bit more for the others. I don't know. But then the next year, you're going to be saying, okay, if these events are successful, we're going to have to bring those events back up to full funding. So that's kind of where I am. I think that, we ran on an idea that we want to bring in facilities. The facilities aren't going to pay for them. Well, they may pay for themselves, but we're going to have to pay for them, or somebody is up front.
Right.
Whether it be allocations from the federal government, the state government, or us saving our dollars. And I would like to use recurring dollars to save versus taking our monies out of the general fund or whatnot and paying out for these projects. So, and honestly, the funding probably is going to be a combination of the two. We're going to have to take some savings, and then we're going to take some recurring funds. So I don't agree with funding everything at 100%, but I don't think you should be punished for being successful either. It's a sliding scale, I think, works best with a 50% allocation to brand new events. That way, when a new event comes, they know exactly what they can get. It makes budgeting very easy. If you're wanting 10,000, you know you're going to get 5, or at least that's the max you can get. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. That's good.
I got one more thing.
Go ahead, Councilman.
I respect Councilman Brock's stance on this, and I respect, his opinion. Two things, though. I respect the willingness to try to upgrade our recreational facilities here, but everybody who lives in this town pays taxes to Richland County that is earmarked for recreation. I think we owe it to them to demand Richland County to upgrade these facilities and not just request it. I mean, these people are paying the money there, and they're getting nothing on their return. And then the second thing is, this technically it's not our money. This money is generated by the businesses in this town. If they didn't do well, we wouldn't do well. So we owe it to them as a payback. But this money is not something that we generated. This is something the businesses in this town generated. But I do think Richland County should be responsible, but not necessarily the town of Blythwood, to provide the recreational activities for our children.
Okay, thank you. All
Mr.
right.
Mayor.
Sir, go ahead.
I guess I agree 50-50, somewhat to Councilman Brock and Bowman concept of this budget here. You know, yes, we pay taxes. All of us pay taxes to Richland County. And Richland County is going to take that pot of money and not necessarily deem it that we pay, Blythwood paid this into their pot, so they're going to bring it back. We don't have any control over what the county does with their money to a certain degree. We can stand up, we can, you know, talk to council, we can call our council members as we do, but still though, we don't have any control over Park and Rec. Park and Rec will put their money where they see it needs to be put based on whatever matrix they put out. And yes, the businesses provide the conduit to bring this money back. But if I don't go eat chicken wings on Friday night, then my portion of that H-tax, you know, it's not there. So we do pay it. All of us pay it. All of us that eat here in Blythwood and support these local businesses, we're paying it. But I think from last year, if I remember correctly, you know, we made a decision to make a one-time pull into that fund balance to get these events going, to support these events fully. And we done it, and we had great events. We had a great time. We seen great turnout. And I'm going to commend those people for putting on those events. They've done a great job. But I think that moving forward, I think that Blythwood, I think that we can do something with Park and Recreation on our own, as I know my colleagues ran on, to get Blythwood, something that we can say that is ours. It's the town's. It belongs to us. We're providing that avenue for our children. But I don't see us being willing to take the hard direction to cut. That's what I'm seeing. I knew it from the beginning. I'm seeing it now, exactly how it would turn out. If we want to go that route, if we want to purchase land, we have it set up here to look at it and calculate to purchase land and pay off using the funds that we know legally we can use to pay off this land. I like the events. I don't want anyone to sit here and think that I don't like events or a particular event. I'm just looking at the grand scheme of things that we can provide for our citizens in addition to. I believe these events would, if we made a hard cut at 70%, I believe these events will still go on. I'm willing to bet you these events will still go on at a 70% cut. I don't see anyone saying, well, you didn't give me 100%, I'm out. I don't see that. But I think that as a council, we will have to make a decision where we could. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir, thank you. Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilman Griffin.
from a council standpoint, what are we trying to do?
Trying to decide to spend all the money, H-tax, A-tax, L-tax, that we have allocated to spend, which is $192,341. If we choose not to spend all that, you can save it for other purposes, such as expanding a park, buying property to make a new park, improving any of the facilities we own, in the name of tourism and bringing more people here. So do we want to save money in addition to what we already have saved? Or do we just allocate all this to all the requesters, because they're proven, all except one I know of personally, brings tourism, I mean, we have the scores to show you which ones do it better, which ones are at the bottom. So that's what we're looking at. Are we gonna save money, or we're gonna just go ahead and spend it all as allocated? So, I'm of the mind to put some aside, because I think we do need to. There's 3 pieces of property we're looking at potentially buying for the town of Blythwood if we decide to do that. Those properties won't be there much longer because they're gonna sell them to somebody. And then now we're in a bind where there's not that many big pieces of property remaining in the town. So it's like the time is on us. Either we're gonna do that or we're not gonna do it. But if we don't do it now, it's not gonna be available in the future. That's just my take on it.
But if we were to, even buying the property, would the money come from here?
Yes. It would come from us. Is that what you mean?
Come out of this, what we talking about cutting?
Well, right, and see, so you look at the top of the sheet, if you cut all these requesters down by 5%, then we set aside $11,000. If you cut them by 20%, we set aside $40,000. If you cut them by 30% of their request, $59,000. I'm of the mind, any one of these programs could be successful if we cut them by 25%. I think they'll still survive. They'll just add for more sponsorships, they'll sell more tickets, they'll add $2 to their ticket price, whatever they need to do to continue doing it. Now, if you cut them too far, like we've heard before us today, they may decide, well, we'll just go somewhere else and do it. The Ridgeway or Segra Park or Lexington or whatever. So. But at least we're setting aside funds. I'm of the mind to go at an 80 or 90% rate, one of the two, and save $21,000 to $40,000 in addition to what we will save at the end of the year. We always have excess funds. And then you look back at what we have in the fund balance, so what is it, $3 million, different funds, but $3 million probably set aside right now?
Right.
Yeah, roughly.
It's almost $750,000 in each tank.
Yeah.
Here's.
Go ahead.
One other thing before, I asked for a sheet, and I thought it would be very helpful to the public to have a sheet with capital improvement projects on it, so that the folks see, because we're essentially arguing over to go left or right on numbers with nothing to mirror up. Like, if we cut this, we can do this. That was my ideal of having 2 different sheets, because it's easily spent if we cut 30-40% off of this, that we don't want these events. So to the naked eye, if we're gonna cut 20% to save 40,000, we're saving 40,000, but this is where your 40,000 is going to. So that it's not just blankly out there, that, because people we give 30-second sound bites up here, and folks gonna run with it. And folks will say, well, Councilman Griffin doesn't like our program, when that's not true. I think all of us, we want to support these events as much as possible. We want to support some new events coming in, but we also have projects that we owe to the residents of Blythwood too, to improve on, in facilities in the future. So I think, just my suggestion, Mr. Mayor, I think moving forward, it will really help shape what our whole concept of proof of operation would be if we're going to cut 80% down to 80%, 20%. This is where that money is allocated towards.
Right. Exactly. That's our next monthly meeting, we're supposed to talk about how much money do we want to spend? Do we want to do that land acquisition? We've got to make a decision going forward. So exactly what you just said, we do not have that list. we have to develop that list. And a big ticket item like buying 50 acres to 90 acres of land, that's everything you got. So we're gonna do that, then we gotta start budgeting for that and look at the savings we have to put forward on that. If we're not, we're just gonna do park improvements and things like that, then that's where this money would go to. So I absolutely agree with you. We've gotta come together and put our project list in. Councilman Brock and I talk about leveling that one field off out here, putting drains in it, making 2 huge football multi-purpose fields with lights.
Absolutely.
And then there you go, and we monetize that. And then, so we have expanded our recreation facilities here in the park. And then as teams come to use it, either USC Women's Rugby Club or the Blythwood Soccer would pay a fee just for seeds and upkeep of the fields, and we'll be fine. Okay. So,
And
go ahead.
you have identified multiple parcels that will potentially fit our bill. So, and we don't want to put it out there necessarily what they are, because you don't want to make it,
Right.
make it more challenging on yourself to negotiate. But, you know, I understand what Councilman Griffin's saying, and, you know, at some point, we have to make a decision. Do we want to proceed with this?
That's right.
Or not? And I wish I could say that I believe that Richland County is going to really step up and help Blythwood. I just haven't seen it over the past several years. And so the best individuals to invest in Blythwood are the people who are in Blythwood. So investing in ourselves is going to yield the biggest return on that investment, because no one's going to work harder for us than us. So I think once we identify our goal,
Yeah.
or the finish line, we can develop the process to get there. And it's going to take a combination of spending monies that we've saved and a combination of saving to get us there.
You know, one thing that I think that we struggle a little bit with is, you know, the county looks at us as we have revenue. Okay. What are you doing with your revenue? And I think it's easy for us to default back to the county and say, well, you guys, we're paying taxes, y'all take care of this. But I think that if we were smart about it, and we went out, we purchased a parcel of land, and we said, this is gonna be the Blythwood Recreation Park, whatever we call it. And we begin that process. The county does not want to be left behind. The county is gonna want some stake in that to say that we participated in this park. I'm of the belief that they will come in and say, we want, here's whatever, here's $50,000 towards building the field. So I think that we have to start some of these things first, get the engine moving, and then we will get those buy-ins from our other elected partners. Instead of just cold turkey saying, well, we want you guys to come in and fix this.
So you think Richland County wants proof of concept?
Yeah.
Absolutely, I agree.
Wow.
Why not?
I would absolutely hear what you're saying, but the park here belongs to the county. The issue is not that we're asking them and we have our own revenue, it's their park. It's been the same since the 1970s. That's the only argument I ever have with them. Come in here, tear those fields down, turn them around the way they're supposed to be, have a big thing in the middle, just like you've done in Lower Richland, just like you've done in Casey, just like you've done all over this county, not Casey. Anyway, the towns, municipalities, Columbia, anyway, or turn it over to us, and then we will take ownership of it and do it. Now, in all fairness, I have not written a formal letter in a while. I have met with county council members in the past and the recreation director and their board, but I owe them a letter, which we need to get together, Sarah Lynn, and to those elected officials to just bring them back up to speed on what it is we're asking for assistance with, because communication is key. You might have people who are newly elected that don't know the scope of the problem like the former elected officials knew. So we do owe it to them to communicate. So that's a great point. And we're willing to take over operational control of it and add money to it, and then maybe that's the answer we're looking for. But that's a great point. All right. Any other comments? Mr. McKendrick? Anyway. Yeah, you're right. Okay. All right, council members. Mr. Brown.
Can you check that mic and see if it's on?
Pull that mic to you, please. Thank you.
I think the battery's dead on that one, too. There
That's
you
fine.
go.
Perfect.
That's better.
Okay, so you have two sheets. One is the recommended amount by staff and the point system, and one is cutting by percentage across the board with the exception of the three cultural events that do not make money. Let me see, I did have a question. Mr. Williamson, the one, your point system sheet, And item number 3, Pioneer Days Rodeo, they asked for 25,000. In the right column, it says 100%, but you only have 12,500 recommended.
Okay.
Is that an oversight? Do we?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, so that would be 25,000.
Yeah, I think that, thank you. Yeah, that should be 25,000.
Yeah, okay, if it was
Yeah.
100%, right, and then I just went line by line, 75%.
Although I think
Go ahead.
that is a new event, but but based on the point.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, please.
Mr. Mayor, would you clarify on the points sheet which of the events are first-time events? Because if the Pioneer Days Rodeo at Blythwood is a first-time event, it's not noted, it just says points over 22.
But I think we've had 2 fall rodeos, no? Already? Just one so far? Okay, one.
One was a
Okay.
reschedule.
Gotcha. Tracking. You got it. Yeah. It was funded before but not executed.
Yeah, it was canceled.
Yeah.
On this list, the Pioneer Days, Range for Hope, and I think the Blythwood Girls Golf is a new event.
The Lady Bingo Invitational, okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's.
So say that again, please.
Range for Hope,
Okay, hang on, let me find it.
the Pioneer Days Rodeo,
Yep.
and the Blythwood Girls Golf. Women's History actually happened this year.
Pioneer Days, so there's 3 new events, okay? Item 3, item 4, right? And 8, and item 8, if you're looking, counting down the rows. Okay,
And the Range for Hope would fall under Councilman Griffin's recommendation of minority and veteran-owned or veteran-sponsored events, because it's a veteran-sponsored event.
okay.
Would the Westwood Queens of the Castle qualify as a new event?
Yes, we funded it last year, but they had to cancel.
So
I would
yes?
say new, yes.
Yes, okay,
Yep,
so we got 4 then.
Okay.
Items, line item 2, 3, 4, and 8.
Yes. It'd save you 27,000, right? Is that what you got?
Well, Mr. Williamson, the 139,450, does that incorporate the Blythwood Championship Rodeo at 25,000 or 1250?
I think that's 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Because
you would really
it's in a
only
total.
save.
Okay, I see what you said.
That number would be lower by 14.5.
Okay.
And then based on that, I mean, are you saying 100% for everything and then 50% for the new, and that be the only rules? Or you're saying apply based on what the point system, but automatically make 50% at every new event?
Yes,
Yes,
The
this is
latter.
latter.
So still
The
apply the
latter.
scores?
yes.
Okay.
That would look to put the total amount allocated to 124,950 if my math is correct.
Mr. Mayor,
Sir,
only 50% for first-time events.
Mm-hmm.
I think really that should be case by case. Because there are some events that could generate and make tremendous amount, bring a tremendous amount of people in town, and they may need the 100% to get it started. So I think sometimes you have to look at the event rather than just put everything in the same box and say we're gonna do everything by 50%. That's my position on it.
Councilman Griffin, the only point I have to that is that then there's bias comes into that, because you're going to favor one over another.
Well, we do that every time we make a decision.
Well, we're trying not to. I think that's the point of the point system.
You can't do it, Mr. Councilman Brock. If somebody brings an idea in here and we said as council, we are using our opinion to make that decision. That has nothing to necessarily do with bias. It's just the decision that we have to make. I don't think anything comes in here that's cookie cut that we say that that's done. So whatever event comes in, it has to make sense to us because we're the one that's making the decision. And by the way, I only carry one vote. So even if I am biased toward a situation, that's just my vote. And everybody else has their vote. If we're trying to do the right thing, then we're gonna make the best decision that's for the town. So there's no, I disagree with the fact that bias is gonna creep in because it's a council vote, not an individual vote.
Then too,
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, please.
Then too, most every event that come in front of us, except for, I have heard, correct me if I'm wrong, with Ms. Page, she would have liked it to get the 2,000, but she would settle for whatever we would give
That's right.
to do the event. She would make up that loss. So most events come before us and give us that spiel or speech. If I don't get this 100%,
I'm moving.
we out. So we hear it over and over. We're just, as a council, we're just at a point where we're gonna have to make a hard decision, whether we're gonna support baseball complexes, support infrastructure upgrades, or give 100% to events in town. We're just at that hard road, that fork in the road. We at the four-way stop at McNulty in Boney Road. That's it, the new enhanced four-way stop. So.
All right, so fully funding all of them according to the score sheet would be 199,200. Is that what you're tracking? I just added all of them up right here.
199,200
Yeah,
is
that's
what
it,
I got.
199,200. Not available is 192,341.
Difference is 68.59.
There is a, Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, please.
there is something here. We don't want to really throw out the baby with the dishwater. So I don't know whether it means that we need to take a hardcore move or a subtle move. I do understand what you're saying about raising money, but even the money that we got right here is not going to buy any land complex. It ain't going to do none of that. Over the course of years, if you save up this money, then you could say you're going to have it, but that won't happen no time soon just on this money.
Unless you put the multi-million dollars we have set aside, yeah. I mean,
Exactly.
yeah.
But if I'm dealing with a multi-million dollars that I'm already dealing, then I'm really not counting on this money.
Right, right. But then I would propose we use that to maintain it, because if you have a new park, for instance, you're gonna have to have a staff.
I agree.
So it would be, but yeah, I mean, you're right. That's what makes it tough, like Councilman Sloan Griffin just said.
And one of the things that creeps into this is the fact that you're talking about getting the gym, Bethel Hamburg gym. That has to be maintained, upkept, the whole 9 yards. So, I mean, there are pros and cons both ways.
Right.
I just don't want to, I'm opposed to just throwing out the baby because and along with the ditch water, and we end up with nothing. Now, I agree with Brock and Sloan from the standpoint of we need to do some things that is going to generate some income. But at the same time, what are these? Which one of these events that we see? Because we say some of these events don't raise money. So if we know they don't raise money, and raise money for whom? Definitely not raise money for the council, because the town don't get the money. And me, if I were to look at this, I would look at it from a standpoint, and this could be far-fetched, and I would take a percentage. A percentage to me solves the whole problem, because one of the problems that we just finished hearing about is Mayor Ross, former Mayor Ross was talking about, we're worried about how much money an auxiliary or an event makes. Well, the percentage takes away that. I don't care if they make $1 million. If they make $1 million and the town gets their percentage, that will cover the manor and the park. And we move on. If they make $1 million, but that also, as Councilman Brock said, they put some sweat in the game. That also puts the onus back on them to make the event a good event. If they don't, then they're not spending our money. They're not spending the town's money. If we're gonna get a percentage. Now, I don't know whether you get the percentage up front, or you get a percentage after the fact, but.
Yeah, you'd have to show, they'd have to show their revenue.
Right.
And based on that, yeah.
And then that would be bias. We just finished talking about bias. How do we know that that budget coming back to us is the actual
Right,
budget?
then you'd have to do the control mechanisms we spoke about before, yeah. Like if it, yeah.
But they're supposed to do that anyway, don't they?
Yeah, they are, but I mean,
They're
like.
supposed to do that,
yeah.
even if you cut their funds, they gotta do the same thing, right?
So if an organization cleared $16,000 on an event and our fee for the park was would be 15%, that's only $2,400. Now, it's better than 1,000 over there, but we're not covering the loss here. So the minimum would have to be $4,200, so we could say something like this. We give you 100% funding, we're gonna charge you 15% of your gross revenues, or $4,200, whichever is less, or more, more.
You'd establish a floor.
There you go, the floor, thank you. And maybe we do that. Give them 100% now, take 6,800 out, but then we're gonna get revenues back based on, to cover the manor, based on a scale.
But not all these events are manor.
Well, those
Yeah.
three, sorry. Well, I mean, no, but if they have an event.
I mean, or at the
yeah,
park,
like the
I mean,
rodeo, like
I
the
mean, some
rodeo
of-
is not
right,
manor.
or-
Right, but still, that would be 15% of their revenue would be.
Okay.
Oh, I see.
I got you, right. Go ahead.
Were you saying something?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
In these events over here, how many of these events grandfathered? I mean, next year we gonna spend the money. Next year we gonna spend the money.
Oh.
You mean like legacy?
Yeah, legacy events, like events that are gonna come back.
Yeah.
I think all of them, right?
Yeah.
Well, you know, the rodeo's in its 11th year, so.
There's only 4 new events, or I guess 3 if you don't exactly count the Queens of the Castle, so all of them plus 3 new ones?
So I'm missing something. If we're saying that all of these people are gonna get money, but we're talking about cutting the money, we're still giving them the money, so, I mean, I'm trying to figure out what are we trying to say with this?
You're just giving them less money, so you retain a balance to save for whatever projects we come up with.
Okay, well, like you said before, if there's an event that comes up and they said that the county says you got money, Sloan said the county said you got money, so we'll spend your money. What is the people of the town gonna say, and they say, you cut my money and you got $3 million?
Right.
I mean, it's the same principle to me. If the county looks at your money and say you got money, so spend your money, the town gonna look at us sitting on $3 million and say we're gonna cut somebody from not doing something. And we sitting on $3 million. Now, we're talking about doing this for the town and the constituents of the town, as Sloan said, that they're not accustomed or apprised to the information, but they do know how much money we got. True. So if we're sitting here and we're saying we got $3 million, they don't care nothing about the park, they don't care nothing about none of those other things that we're talking about, and we say, okay, we're gonna cut your money by 30%. But we're saying that they're legacy accounts. If there were accounts that we were looking at every year and making a decision on, then we make a decision on it. But if you're saying they're legacy accounts, then they're already in. How do you tell the people that you got $3 million, but you can't fund it? With good faith. Now, I understand you're talking about cutting money, but you could do that. But how do you honestly tell them that? And you sit on $3 million. I'm with you if y'all could tell me how to do it.
No, that's fine.
Mr. Mayor.
That's why.
Councilman
That's-
Grip. Go ahead, Sloan.
That's why I asked for 2 separate sheets. Case point.
Yeah, but we don't know that.
I know, but I'm just saying that's a case point.
Yeah.
That's why I asked for that.
So our next meeting,
agree
we
with
need
that.
to.
I mean, I think we will know more shortly when we get appraisals back, and we just don't have that right now to say, this is it, this is the price, yeah.
I get it. I'm not
Yeah.
throwing it out there saying it's your fault or your fault. I'm just saying simply, case point.
Yeah.
That's why it's important if we're gonna have these discussions about cutting something. And we're looking at, okay, you're gonna save at 80%, you're gonna save $40,000. Where's my 40 going to?
Right.
Right,
Along with the money that we got in the bank.
right, that's right.
So that's what I'm saying, is having that, it controls the confusion to where you can't have these 30-second sound bites and spin it that somebody doesn't like something. You don't support me. When that has nothing to do with what we're working on. So I'm not throwing on nobody, I'm just saying, once we get that document,
I think our next
it
meeting we
helps
will.
us to develop that.
That's the whole thing, you know, what you're talking about. If it doesn't get spent, though, it goes automatically into the fund balance again. The fund balance keeps growing, and the people still don't see the money being spent. I mean, yeah, we may have it earmarked, just like the budget, say make something, but if it doesn't get spent, it goes right back into the fund balance, and the fund balance continues to grow until you spend that fund balance.
But we have plans moving forward.
Well,
That's the
We
whole
have plans on
consensus.
paper, that's the
Well,
thing,
we
though.
recently did a strategic plan.
Yeah,
We
that's what
recently
I'm
talked
getting-
about what we're gonna do. Now we gotta come up with that project list that you're talking about.
And that's where I'm following along with
Yeah.
you, what you put together, Mr. Mayor.
I'm with you. You're right on
So,
point.
yeah, we got money in the bank, and we have plans with the money in the bank, at least a portion of it. We're not gonna sit there and bankrupt the bank. That's ludicrous.
Okay, so Councilman Brock.
Well, that was a lively discussion there. I feel that the town is in a very enviable position that we do have nearly $3 million in the bank, that we operate on a surplus and not a deficit. These are good things. These are good problems, if you want to say that, to have. I agree. I understand what you're saying, Councilman Larry Griffin, and I think Hartsville would be a very good case study, whereas they had a bunch of money in the bank. They saved and they saved and they saved, and then they built a revenue-generating facility. And then they saved and they saved and they saved for years. They saved their H-tax funds because you don't have to spend it. We don't have to allocate a single dime in H-tax funds. We are not required by statute. They saved and they saved and they saved, and boom, they spent another large portion to build their water facility, and now they have an attraction that they advertised on I-77 in our backyard. I know Councilman Sloan Griffin saw it because we commented about it. Neptune, I believe, is called Neptune Water Park. And now they attract hundreds of thousands of visitors. I know they had millions of dollars in revenues. I don't know what the impact of COVID was before that. But they took the hardline approach of we're going to save our money. Now, they have the ability to raise millage or tax via millage. We don't, which is positive for our citizens. But we do have a plan. We have a plan on paper. All plans start on paper. Now it is our job to take the plan and move forward and execute said plan. If that involves saving funds to get there, then that's just what we're going to have to do. To say we don't support your event, I find that insulting. If we give you money, we are supporting your event. It may not be the level of support that you want, but you're getting support from the town. If you want $10,000 and you get $7,500, I mean, you're going to come to me and tell me that that's inadequate? That's insulting to every single member that sits behind this table, that $7,500 is not good enough. It's free money. It doesn't cost, all you have to do is fill out an application, and then on the back end, tell us how well you did. I don't think anybody should come up here and say, oh, I'm not going to take this money that you're willing to grant out to us. And I agree, and I think Mayor Franklin does, and I know Sloan does because he said it. I believe every single event will go on, whether they get 95, 70%, or a point system funding. They're just going to go out and do what Americans have always had a history of doing. They're going to go out and they're going to work harder to accomplish their goals. That's what we do. So, we have a plan. We have a strategic plan that's been put in place. It will be refined. It's a living document. It should always be reviewed and updated every year, every semi-annual, whenever we decide. And some of these plans, some of these things that we want to do require funding. It's probably going to be a combination of taking some monies that we saved, but we can't take all the money we've saved. We need recurring funds to do it. And H-tax dollars are the best recurring funds. The dollars that we receive should go up over time. Our population grows, new businesses come into town. H-tax and A-tax dollars should increase. We went from 400 to 410. I hope you're wrong. I hope it's 500 that we get next fiscal year. Because then all of a sudden, we've got an extra $90,000 that we can pocket. But we can't budget on that. We can't plan on that. We can only plan on what we feel is feasible. And if we have, if we cut everything down on the point system, if we did it down to 50% for first-time events, it shows $67,000 in savings. Okay, maybe that's a little too much. I don't know. If we did it 70%, you're going to save 59. If we did it 80%, you're pocketing 40, plus whatever the additional that we receive over our anticipated 400 or 410 or whatever this was.
Right, just to be clear, this is based on the 400.
Okay,
and
then everything would be up by 10,000, approximately.
Correct, oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so if it goes to 500, we get the savings plus 90. So, and to echo Councilman Ballman's, we still have that money that we can use it next year. We have a big pot of H-tax dollars that can still be used. But we do want to use that to acquire a facility that's going to generate revenue more than 30 or 32 days out of the year. These events take place over about 32 days. If we have a recreational complex in full swing, maybe it operates 250 days out of the year. Maybe it operates 300 days out of the year. That's 10 times the opportunity to generate revenue for the town. We just have to decide where we want to invest our town funds, in events, in a facility, or hopefully a combination of both. I'm done. I'm off my soapbox, Mr. Mayor.
And there are only 3 events here that affect Delco Manor revenue, by the way. I just looked at them. The Oktoberfest.
I agree with that.
The Spring Rib Cook-Off, and the Artist Guild, assuming the Artist Guild is going to be here, right? Okay, so all the rest here on this sheet, well, I'm not counting the Veterans Day. I guess I should. Okay, maybe that affects your revenue too.
Maybe the Women's History Month, but those are the 3. Those are the 3 above the line that I had as well.
Yeah, exactly. But those 3.
Black history.
Yeah, well, it's not on, that's an internal event, yeah, so.
That's a calendar
Yeah.
thing. That works itself off.
But yeah, it does, you're right, but we just have to suck that one up.
Also, Black History Month this year.
Okay.
What day is it on, Ms.
Well, it's
Shaffer?
usually in February, so,
So that's outside of our prime wedding season?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, but it's still a Saturday, correct?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, see, those would be ones we would have to, community promotions, we would have to fund the loss to you.
Could I make a couple comments here?
Go ahead, we're getting ready to have to end it, but go
Okay. Well, just one thing. I've been involved with A-Tax and H-Tax for over 6 years now because handle all the applications and put the committees together, write all the reports and things like that. So I've seen what's happened over the years. One of the things that I think ought to be considered on some of these new events that even have gone along for a few years, we gave them the money as seed money so they could get up and rolling with the understanding that once they became successful, they wouldn't be so dependent on the H-tax funds. So I think that's something that we ought to consider. Look what happened with the film festival. The film festival now is 100% financially self-sufficient. They're not asking us for any more money. There are also a couple things. There are some events that are successful, and they're making a profit, quote unquote, profit or net income, whatever you call it, but yet they're asking us for more money than the previous year. So I just, like the rodeo. The rodeo kind of ups. Now, we all love the rodeo, but they're a very successful event, but they ask for more money each year. The Westwood band boosters, again, fairly high net income, but they asked us for more money for this fiscal year. So I just want to point that out as we're looking at this budget.
So obviously, no decision today on which way to go. I think we're too far apart, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Mr. Mayor, can you kind of give me some guidance about what you would like to see next?
Okay, here's what I'd like to see, and I'll let them talk.
All right.
I'd like to see a 20% reduction across the board to award 80% on this sheet here for a total of $152,000, a savings of $40,000 for the H-tax fiscal budget. That's what I'd like to see.
Do you want to see any, I mean, there's no need for any other spreadsheets, I guess.
Well, no, I'm just,
Yeah.
their opinions, but, and then we'll discuss it. Maybe we'll add an extra hour on the monthly meeting and finish
That's
this
what I wanted to
up
see if you
before-
need to
yeah.
schedule another meeting.
Yeah, I don't want to, unless they want to. Go ahead.
I would like to see the spreadsheet I asked about with the infrastructure pieces.
Okay.
All the tidbits that we want to do.
Okay, I just don't know how to create that. We can work on it together, but
Like
the
you-
list
you-
of
You'd
what.
have to give him a list. Like, I know in your mind, you've got stuff like the call boxes, you got bump guards, things around town that maybe they don't know about. So we'd have to come together and get a,
Yeah, okay.
or just send him an
And
email
exactly
with
what
them
we
on it and
exactly
let
we're
him
talking
put a
about.
list
Okay,
in.
I mean, because some of that is coming out of SAT. Okay,
I'll send you a list.
okay.
Okay, that's fine. I see what you're saying, yeah. And then maybe, whatever, $2 million for land acquisition, it'll be on that list.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
I got
Stuff
you.
like
And
that on that
And then when you
list.
get them, then we can prioritize them like we've done this, or whatever, and come up with a coherent strategy.
Yeah, it's just not my
Oh, no,
my
no.
ideas. It's just the
Absolutely
land
right.
acquisition, all
Yeah.
of that stuff. So,
Okay.
the
I mean,
potential
what I can do
Bethlehem
is
berry, all-
do this via email individually, just so everyone kind of sees it, and then we get a clear idea of how to bring it back as part of the first reading.
So in addition to this $40,000, let's say you went with my proposal of 80% fund level, you'd set aside 40,000, save it, really. In addition to 15% of every gross revenue that the events generate. So we might generate $150,000, $200,000, which will then answer Larry Griffin's concern about, it's not a lot of money when you say you're saving 40, but it is a lot when you're saving 150, 200,000 every year. In 5 years, you'd have $1 million to add to a capital.
Plus the excess over
Yeah.
the
Oh,
budgeted
yeah,
410.
which we always have, which we always have.
There will
yeah.
be additional monies.
Yeah.
Mr.
Okay.
Mayor,
So
if
just to
I'm-
make clear, it's 15% of
Well,
the revenue
and that's
generated.
debatable, but every organization that gets money here,
Mm-hmm.
instead of paying a $1,000 fee, would pay 75% of their gross revenue.
Regardless of whether it's at the park or not.
I'm sorry, what'd I say? Yeah,
You said
that's-
75. That's
I
a big number.
apologize.
15.
Yeah, if it's the rodeo,
Right, okay, they still fall in the category of paying the 15%.
right, but if we're gonna establish a floor, then we'd have to say 4,200 or 15%, whichever's higher. And then, so that means the rodeo would pay a maximum of 4,200, even though they're not using the manor, but we'd have to do that to be consistent across the board. Does that make sense? Okay. It's an idea. I mean, we can debate it and everything. Ms. Brock, you were going to say something?
I was just going to say that I caught the tail end of your
Oh, I
reference.
would,
Yes,
I recommended personally 80% funding level for these events as written here on this sheet.
I have no problem with that.
For
The
40
only
and-
caveat is that
Yeah,
I would
go
add the 50% maximum funding for first-time events. 50%
For
maximum
first time.
funding for first-time events, or first occurred, not, I still consider the Queens of the Castle a first-time event. I understand last year they didn't happen, it got canceled because of COVID, so it would be a first-time occurrence event.
So like, for instance, to be clear, $8,250 for the Queens of
Correct.
the Castle.
Correct.
Not 50% of the 13,000.
Correct.
That's it, okay.
50% of the requested.
All right, you got
It
that,
only
Mr.
impacts
Williamson?
four of them this year.
50% of what they are requested, or 50% of the?
Requested.
Requested.
Right, yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
That's if you're in the 80% column, that blows a little softer.
Everybody else would get the 80% column.
Correct.
With the exception of the first-time events would
get
get
50% of
50%
requested.
of their requested.
Can I echo something?
Please.
So I agree with 80. I'm just not short up on the 50% piece for first time.
Right.
I think it's subjective. We need to look at the events like Councilman Larry Griffin said. We need to kind of, and that's going to be subjective. I mean, that's a hard piece to sit there and say, well, this first time golf tournament coming in, they've been in Georgia and they brought in 500,000 people, or TV coming in with them. I think a lot of us would jump behind something if it's going to bring national spotlight. So it's going to be hard. I can support 80%, but we need to figure out something with that 50%. That's what I'm saying.
Because now they know they got a $10,000 bill in front of them at Cobblestone, just for the rent.
Yeah.
So if you give them 80%, then they don't have near as much to go out and try to get. But if they fall into your category of minority, women-owned, and veteran-owned, then they should get.
They get 100%. That's where I'm going.
They should be one that takes off of there, and it shouldn't be 80%. They should get the whole $10,000.
That's it. And you prove that's exactly what I'm talking about.
So we're getting closer. All right, is everybody comfortable with starting our monthly meeting at 6 PM instead of 7 PM? So we can
Yes.
finish this? Sure. So I know some of us got to have places to be at 1300 at 1 o'clock.
Okay. So that's May
Good.
24th, I believe, at 6 o'clock. Okay.
And if we don't get it right there, we still have time
Right.
to call another session.
Another meeting,
and get
yeah.
2 votes in.
Yeah.
Before the end of June is the requirement.
Correct.
All right. We're looking to adjourn unless
I make
somebody.
second.
I have one question.
I actually had a couple pages to add real quick.
Okay.
That's-
Okay, go ahead.
Just to, on the manor, we just hadn't got to that page yet, I'll keep it brief, but just the,
Which page?
Page
15?
14.
14, all right.
just the transfers changed because of what we already noted. Yeah, page 15, I'm sorry.
Okay.
We just added, 70, went to 7,200, that's an increase of 3,000 for the dehumidifier that is needed to be done. And also, just note that we changed, 25% is how much was transferred over to the manor from the general fund previously to cover Steve's, but as you can tell, he's doing more than just manor when he's doing the park and all the H-tax management, so we've made that 40% and also included the FICA and the health insurance and everything that goes with that, also transferred over 40%. And then, based on y'all's recommendation on the work session, increased $1 wages on all the staff. Okay, so all that is reflected that was on page 15, the additional dollar for the wages. So just want to point that out.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor to adjourn. Any further discussion?
I have one question.
Go ahead, please.
From a budget vote perspective, what amount of time between the two votes is necessary? Like if we didn't vote on May 24th and we called a special call meeting for the following Monday, does there have to be a week between,
I think
2
it's
weeks?
6 days is
Okay.
the.
A week, basically.
Between readings, yeah.
Okay. So we would have time, but not a whole.
Or we could do a work session number 3, if that's what, if y'all want to come back together, or we could do it on a Saturday, if you wanted to, whatever be your pleasure. Just trying to make it easy. I think we're close. I think we can figure this out in the next council meeting and just come to a decision. Because we're right there. I think the only sticking point is the 50% first-time funding. So we're right there, though.
All right, well, I'll create that spreadsheet and send it out, and y'all can see what the difference is in revenue based on that.
And then we're going to send you our ideas for projects so we can
Yeah, we can
put
create
them
that
on
for
paper
sure.
and
Yep.
just estimate a cost and talk it out. So, okay. All right, any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. We're adjourned. Thank you all.